You're tuned in to Horror Slop, where the stories are rotting, truth is twisted, and sleep, forget about it.
Yeah, welcome to the pit. It's gross, it's creepy, and honestly, it's kind of my vibe. Hope you like nightmares, because tonight's tale, it slithers.
Straight from the darkest corners of Reddit. Real stories, real fear, and just enough blood to stain your soul.
So at least grab your bed sheets, so grab a flashlight, and maybe a therapist.
This is Horror Slop. And now the first descent. One story to open the night. Just enough to crack the door and let something in.
The previous tenant left a survival guide. Never take the sunlight for granted, by Nutatown JM. I'm fine. She answered, head still hung as if she were ashamed. There was a pause for a moment. Thank you, sweetheart. We'd all be dead without you. Derek chipped in, his normal, calm and positive tone restored. Ellie lifted her head and smiled as he recognized her for the hero she was. It wasn't that I didn't feel the same, it's just that the shock was overwhelming. We need to help another friend now, honey. Do you want to grab Kat and come with me? Ellie wrapped her clawed hand in mine as I clutched Derek's blood-soaked tweed cap with the other. She looked at me with love, just like she had at the beginning of this nightmare. The cold atmosphere of the floors below that we stood in had been reduced to a pile on the ground, just like Albert. We walked towards flat minus 51. Every step felt wobbly, like those few steps after a really spinny ride at the fair. I struggled to put one foot in front of the other. Derek dropped to where Essie lay squirming and put a gentle hand over her chest, carefully avoiding the splintered rib bones that stuck out. The shards of bone that decorated her entire body started to move and rearrange. She squealed in pain as her skin started to cauterize over the newly repositioned bone and innards. Her twisted limbs started to resemble something human again. I felt tears rolling down my face. Once she was as close to her usual herself as she was going to get, Derek took a step back as she opened her eyes, that had returned to the hollowed sockets, and looked directly at me. The bruises shone purple and green underneath the harsh artificial lighting, reminding me that we weren't really home. Come on, sweetheart, we're gonna stand in the other room. Derek said to Ellie as he ushered her into the hallway and away from the smoke, leaving me alone with Ms. Beckman. I'm sorry, Essie. I started. She tried to reply, but she could barely make a sound. You were right though, he did need help. Now no one in the block is going to go through what you have anymore. I'm sorry I couldn't save you. You. Can. No, not. Me. Go home. Go home. She managed. Every word leaving a trail of pain in her face. I cringed. Despite her better appearance, she wasn't fixed. She was in as much pain as she had been before. I smiled at her, just to try and make her feel a little normal. Speaking in fucking riddles again, Essie. I responded, trying to muster a laugh through the tears that continued to fill my eyes. She looked directly at me again and I knew that she had been serious. We finished our smoke in silence as I wept and she wheezed. Derek. I shouted after a few more minutes with her, encouraging him back into the flat. Him and Ellie appeared within seconds. Derek walked towards us and put his arms around the both of us for a moment in silent mourning before stepping back. Ellie looked up at me, a knowing in her voice, and she spoke. I want to go home now, Kat. Her words broke what was left of my resolve. The sobbing began and Derek put his hand on my shoulder. He started to walk us out of the hallway, and as we reached the mess on the floor that had once been Albert, outside the door of flat minus 42, I came to a sudden stop. No further. We need to go in there. I said, directing them into the open door of my anti-flat. Derek tried to speak in protest, but I stopped him the moment he opened his mouth. "Please. Just trust me." Essie hadn't led me astray before, her advice had been sound. I'd taken a few detours, but I got to the right place eventually. If I were to respect her death, then I had to follow the last bit of advice she gave out. The flat was familiar. My sofa, fold-out table and kitchen were all there, identical to the ones I'd spent so much time at. The flat was windowless, the sole indication in my confusion that I wasn't truly home. I pulled back the curtains of the balcony doors to reveal thick concrete behind them. I felt my face sink. Whatever Essie had wanted me to see here wasn't as clear as I'd hoped. I should have anticipated that it wouldn't be easy. Derek and Ellie stood in silence as I inspected every inch of the place, even down to an equally smashed copy of the prison I had kept Jamie in. Frustrated, I eventually looped back into the living room, prepared to walk out the front door and follow Derek to the basement entrance, where he would leave us again. The prospect of going through all that for him to remain trapped in these layers was more disheartening than anything I'd felt before. Then I saw the light. "How?" Derek uttered in wonder as his eyes fixed on the grate that had appeared at the top of the concrete, behind the sliding balcony doors. The sun flooding in lit up his whole face and electrified his kind eyes. The opening looked just the same as it had the night I found the kittens, but from the other side its appearance was all the more poignant. Who would have thought that metal bars could signify such freedom? The grate was just large enough for a person to fit through with enough of a squeeze, and I could almost make out the shrubbery me and the twins had planted. "See? You're coming too." I grinned at Derek with the first bit of true joy I'd felt in quite some time. He didn't protest this time, or argue at all. He smiled back and just said two simple words. "Thank you." The sunlight bathed us all and Ellie dropped to the ground the same time as her claws and horns began to retract. I couldn't pinpoint the exact moment the voids disappeared, but they did. There she was, mess of blonde hair on her head and brown puppy dog eyes looking at us as she hit the ground with a thud. A little girl you wouldn't suspect more than a tantrum of replaced the ferocious beast that had protected me through this hellish landscape. I pulled one of the chairs from the fold-out table below it and turned to Derek. "You first, so you can pull us out." I handed him the flat cap, still soaked in blood, and he placed it onto his head with a genuine smile. He looked himself again with it in place as he took a step onto the chair. Before climbing out he turned to us and winked. As I burst through the small gap, pulled by both Derek and Ellie, the bright sun and sensation of the shrubs in my hair as I crawled through them felt like a rebirth. The garden was stunning. Dewdrops littered the green foliage and the rising, orange sun lit them up like fireflies. I had never been more appreciative of it. Looking back at the outer edge of the building, the grate was gone, along with any indication that it had been there at all. I wondered why it had appeared in my flat down there. Why I had been the person to find it both times, and I remembered what Albert had said about the building altering those who stay. I pondered he was right, and if it was possible that it had altered me already. As we sat in the fresh morning air, I knew that none of it really mattered. Standing outside of a grim city tower block was cathartic. Gray concrete had never looked so inviting. I wish I could say that Terry greeted us with joy. I really do wish I could. Terry couldn't breathe properly through thick, heavy sobs. The noise muffled my already fucked up ears. Derek sat with his arms around her while Ellie nuzzled into his other side, and I sat opposite, blood-soaked, devastated and alone. The tapping on the door brought all conversation, sobbing and brooding to a stop. Terry sprinted to the door, hope in her eyes, and as it opened she wailed in joy. The familiar voice of the young boy jolted me back into the room, and I turned to see Eddie, accompanied by none other than Mr. Prentice. Eddie spotted his sister on the sofa and ran towards the three of us. I turned and walked towards the door, to where Terry and Mr. Prentice were speaking. Mr. Prentice wobbled slightly as he kept himself propped up with his cane. I didn't recognize the man in the suit, I couldn't get close enough, but I don't understand how anyone could stand over an injured child and not help. He ran into the lift when I got closer, and you know how I like to avoid that place. I imagined Mr. Prentice, in his animal form, running towards Albert. Imagining that the landlord had run scared from the beast warmed my heart. Anyway, I'm rather tired. So if you don't. Mr. P stopped as he caught a glimpse of the inside of the flat behind us. His eyes widened. Is that Derek? Terry clutched the twins tightly as the two men reveled in their meeting. I couldn't help but smile quietly to myself and think of Essie. The kids were safe, Derek was back, and Albert couldn't continue to terrorize the block. And yet again, Mr. Prentice had proved himself the real MVP. We walked back to the 7th floor where mine and Mr. P's flats were. It should have been a victory walk, but I couldn't shake the feeling that everything wasn't entirely over. My feeling was confirmed once the door to flat 48 closed behind Mr. Prentice and Derek looked at me gravely. The last part.
Alright, quick break before our next story. Let's check in with our resident spooky dude. Hey, you ever smile, or is your face just stuck that way?
I smiled once. The sky bled. A child vanished. Never again.
Okay, drama. Maybe next time just try a dad joke.
Knock knock. They never made it to the door.
Wow. Fine, stay moody. Anyways, back to the darkness. This next one's got teeth.
Make it so the world never forgets me. She beamed back at me, eyes ablaze with excitement. That's what I want. Dude, you know you have the power at your fingertips. She wiggled her hands and laughed. Literally. You want me to write about you too? I asked, picking at the skin on my fingers nervously as the prospect of sharing my work with so many strangers terrified me. She looked at me and placed a hand on mine, her beautiful hazel eyes peering into my soul. I want you to want to do it, I'd support anything you did. You know that. She grinned. You are the best writer I know. Come to think of it, you're the only writer I know. I began writing at her behest. She would influence me to take on these long fantastical tales. This is going to be amazing, we are going to be amazing. She beamed at me. Trust me, people will love this. Looking back, I wasn't sure why she wanted me to document her life anonymously when she was such a character already. It seemed odd to be her transcriber and not be able to tell the world that this amazing adventurer, this trendsetter steeped in light, this single note an octave above everyone else ringing out loud and proud beyond the realms of what barriers sound can normally never break, was the brightest light in my life and could easily be yours or anyone else's given 5 minutes and some good food. I remember the first lecture back in class after our winter break. I walked into a rapturous applause from my classmates and my professor. They quickly walked towards me and I hesitantly looked back, assuming they were here for something Liv had done, but no, the professor took my hand in hers and smiled at me with such pure joy. Ricarda, I don't know what possessed you to document this, but, well, it's magical. To see you, the last person to ever stand up and share their work, craft something of this caliber makes me so happy. You have a real talent. The professor seemed so pleased with something I struggled to take as my own work. Were those tears in her eyes? Man, the emotional value was strong, but I wasn't expecting that. Of course she is, why wouldn't she? Liv bellowed behind me, having kicked the door open and put her hands on my shoulders with an exaggerated slap. I jumped and then nodded in agreement. The class cheered in response, and that entire lesson was spent engaging in conversations I'd have never thought possible for my awkward, anxious self before. The questions about my work filled me with a joy that only a creator can truly appreciate. That night, I'd been walking home and thinking of what we could do to write Chapter 2, which we tentatively called A Present-Day Account of the Girl Who Made a Pact. I was so lost in my thoughts and in a situation without anyone to pull me out of it, I had walked headlong into traffic, narrowly avoiding an oncoming car. The raised voices, the smashing of plates, the defiance once held in my voice as I clutched a university pamphlet and a suitcase, the ensuing whirlwind of fists, kicks and smashes before silence fell upon the building I could never hope to call home, save for my whimpering and the rising sound of sirens in the distance. My knees buckled from under me and I sat against the curb, trying desperately to put my breathing under control and remember what I had learned in therapy: think of a feather and imagine it floating. Just focus on the feather, nothing matters but the feather. 10, 9, 8. I felt my muscles loosen just a little bit, a chill coming over me. 4, 3, 2. I didn't open my eyes, but a snarling sound began to crawl up my shoulder and into my ear, the low doldrums of malice beginning to rumble through my skull. I went back to my room, and the moment I shut my bedroom door, I felt the entire room begin to sink. It's hard to explain, but it felt like the lights were dimmer, the air was stale, and every footstep made me feel weaker. I sat at the edge of my bed as my mom stormed over to my desk and began rummaging incessantly for any evidence she could use to punish me, something she'd done since I was a child. You fucking. She was so angry that her eyes were bulging, her face now an ugly puce as veins popped on her temples and her liver spot-ridden neck. You dared to document what happened in that home, that sacred house that you brought shame into? Who the fuck do you think you are, young lady? I gave you life, I own you. I felt her begin to rise above me, the room blackening and the only light seeming to come from her eyes as I sank into a curled-up ball, hands pulling at my hair as I silently sobbed. I will never forgive you for what you did in that home, the shame you brought upon me and your father when you left. You will regret this for the rest of your life, do you understand me? I will make you bear the scars of your shame. I am never leaving your side. She bore down on me, teeth gritted and spit flying from her face as hands stretched out to a pair of scissors on my desk, dark intentions in mind. Well, you know something? I'm never leaving her side either. Love. Olivia leapt forward and in one motion, bit down hard on my mother's neck. She howled and screamed until Olivia pulled away and landed in front of me, shielding me from any further harm as my mother writhed on the ground and screeched like a banshee, her limbs twisting as her voice became more contorted. I will never leave. She gurgled, the dissonance in her voice growing more apparent as her body began to fade. I stood up, tears in my eyes and fists clenched so tight I could feel blood dripping from my palms where the nails had dug in. You're a good girl, Olivia. My best friend. That'll never change. It was summer 2017, I had gotten accepted to a university on the West Coast and unbeknownst to my family, it was time to leave. It was a scholarship program I'd applied to months earlier, partly in the hopes of getting a step closer to my dream job, but mostly because I was determined to escape my parents' home. I stood there, a travel case packed, Olivia with me and a friend on their way to pick me up, much to their delight. I imagine, what went on here wasn't exactly a secret in my town. Do you hear me, girl? When you go out of that door, well, you're fucking dead to me. To all of us, a shame, too. He gave a smug grin before shoving my head away and storming to the kitchen for another drink. You can't go, Ricarda. Mom's voice was low, every syllable was said with intent. I will not allow it. I'm 20 years old, this is my decision and you cannot stop me. I stared her down, but she began to mock me while making slow and deliberate steps towards me. And. You think I care what you want? She screamed, punching me hard across the face and sending me to the ground, my back hitting the coffee table and shattering glass across the floor. "Now look what you made me do," she bellowed, grabbing the bridge of her nose as her daughter cried out in pain on the floor like it was a mess she had to clean up. Olivia ran over to me immediately, defiant and unafraid in the face of this monster. But my mom was undeterred. She picked Olivia off her feet by her throat, slamming her to the ground with ease, before kicking her hard in the stomach and sending her flying across the room. "Stupid bitch, don't know that loyalty has its limits." She spat on her before looking to me and kneeling down, eyes meeting in a tenuous moment as the creature that birthed me began to smile. "Well, Ricarda, since you're all grown up now, I guess I need to give you a coming-of-age gift. It'll be ready in a little bit for you, so take a nap." A boot to my skull later, I was out cold. It was some time later that I found out the night I left and went to the hospital. Charges were pressed against my mom and dad for what they'd done, but I was too traumatized to give evidence and my therapist told the court as much. They still went to prison and I don't think they'll be out for a long time, not after the tapes they kept of their punishment sessions over the years. "Well, I'm glad you're okay now, at least. Did you do the technique we talked about last time?" he asked, his voice soft and understanding, a father figure I never had. "Yeah, I did," I said, sniffing and trying to hold back tears. "Good, as long as you imagine Olivia is there, you can do anything. I can't wait to see your next story entry, by the way. Please keep bringing them to our sessions and don't hesitate to call if you need anything. /click. I sit there for a few more minutes before Olivia breaks the silence, looking up at me with those big eyes that had always brought me so much comfort. "I'll miss you too. After all." My arms passed through her frame as she bore a big smile on her face.
Anyway, let's lighten the mood with something fun and... Nah, just kidding. It gets worse. Hit it.
I woke up, cramped in a dark, confined space. I felt cramps surge throughout my entire body, feeling as I'd been laying in the same position forever. I looked up through the wood and saw darkness. I knew I couldn't be outside. It was too musty and damp to be out in fresh air. I managed to pull myself through the wood, climbing up on top of the auburn box. I clawed my way through the muddied walls, picking worms and bugs off of me along the way. I used my fists to punch through the dirt as hard as possible, until I felt my hand break through and reach the soft grass, a cold breeze whisking through my fingers. It was the strangest feeling. Fiona Holiday, love of my life. Lasted 3 months. October 9th, 2018 inch. I wasn't in a cemetery at all. I was in someone's backyard. There were no neighboring houses, this one was completely isolated. I didn't know whether to scream or cry. Being dead sounded awful enough, but why was I in someone's backyard? Was I murdered? Do my parents know what happened to me? Delilah Woods, love of my life. Lasted 2 days. August 15th, 2016 inch. I covered my mouth and scooted back. This had to be a nightmare, or some kind of prank. Surely there's not 5 other women, buried here. The only way to find out is to dig. I cringed and carefully crept back toward one of the rocks. Casey Jones, I'm sorry for disturbing your sleep. I began to claw at the dirt, until I reached a smooth and cold surface. It wasn't wood. There was no coffin. I grabbed at the object and pulled it up toward me, digging my bloodied nails into the soft, cold rubber. Until I realized that I had grabbed a hand. I screamed and dropped the hand, peering down into the hole. A half-skeleton/half-human lay there, in a floral blouse and shorts. A golden bracelet on her right wrist, saying, "To the love of my life, Dustin." I scooped the dirt back over her corpse and patted it until it was firm. I laid the rock above her. There were missing posters everywhere, all over his fridge. Have you seen me? Fiona Elizabeth Holliday. DOB, July 1, 2003. Age, 15. Last seen, wearing a white dress and red sandals, on July 2 Candelas, 2018 in, redacted, CA. Description, green eyes, long blonde hair. Height and weight, 5 feet 3 inches and approximately 110 pounds. I shakily grabbed the poster, and tore it to shreds. It suddenly dawned on me that I never found out how I died. And mine. Fiona's fatality. They were homemade snuff films. What did I do? I cried in the video. I'm sorry my love, but I can't trust you anymore. You've tried to run away multiple times, and you blew every last chance, he cooed. I was stabbed. Multiple times in the chest. And then he broke my neck. I puked a little in my mouth and quickly turned the camera off. I slowly lifted up my dress and ran my fingers along my stomach and chest. Large, bumpy scars lined across my torso. I shuddered. The sound of footsteps thumping down the stairs made me jump. I stood, frozen with fear. Miss me, Dustin? I whispered. I thought I was the love of your life, Dustin. Why did you have to kill me? I mocked. He just stared. No, this isn't happening. I'm not having this conversation. I'm dreaming. I slowly walked toward him. He clutched the bat tighter. He whimpered. He slowly nodded his head. It's your turn. I yanked the metal bat from his trembling hands and began to smash it into his head, bashing his skull in, blood spraying everywhere. He withered to the ground and I continued to smash until I physically couldn't any longer. I dropped the bat to the floor, grabbed the video camera, and all of the missing posters, and bolted out of the house. It was dark, and I had nowhere to go. I was on top of a hill. I concocted an elaborate and gory, but very believable and accurate story. All I had was my strength and my evidence. And maybe, I thought, I'll find my family again.
You feel that? That weird pressure in the room? Yeah, that's the algorithm. It knows you're watching, and it gets real cranky when you don't feed it. A simple ritual helps. Click the little thumbs up, tap subscribe, say its name 3 times into your phone mic. Kidding, probably.
Engagement appeases the darkness. You know what to do.
Good, human. Now, back to the horror.
When they were little, my daughters loved power outages. If they were asleep when the power went out, my wife and I would wake them up and carry them into the basement. Tornadoes, though not common in southeast Michigan, were not unheard of during bad storms. The girls would giggle as they played games in the glow of a flashlight until they fell asleep in a heap of blankets. My wife and I were, understandably, not as thrilled about power outages, but both of us managed to find a silver lining in our daughter's joy. That silver lining faded after the largest blackout of the Metro Detroit area in 5 decades. It was summertime of /95 during the worst storm I had ever seen. High winds threatened to tear out the trees lining the suburban street, rain pounded against the windows like hundreds of tiny fists, and thunder shook the house like an earthquake. It wasn't a surprise when the power went out at 9:55 p.m., about an hour and a half after our daughters had gone to bed. My wife, who had been nervously watching the Weather Channel when the power went out, said, "Jim, we'd better get the girls to the basement." Someone was pounding furiously on our front door and screaming. The high voice was neither distinguishably male or female, but it called, "Please let me in, please. I was in an accident and I'm hurt. Please let me in." My wife went for the door handle, but I put my hand out. The hairs on the back of my neck were standing up straight and every primal instinct in me was screaming to not let this person in our home. As soon as I looked at my wife, I could tell she understood. "Daddy!" My oldest yelled, "Aren't you going to help that woman?" My youngest started sobbing and buried her face into her sister. I stood there for what seemed like minutes, unsure of what to do, as the pounding and pleading grew more intense. "For the love of God, help me. I don't want to die in this storm." "Jim," my wife whispered, "what do we do? Should I call for help?" I shook my head and replied, "The phones aren't working. Even the corded one isn't. I'll rip your guts out. I'll skin your little daughters and hang their bodies in your front yard." After a few minutes of his pounding and screaming, I stared helplessly as he ran off into the night. After he left, one thought crossed my mind over and over: there shouldn't have been any way for him to know about my daughters if tonight, during the storm, was the first time he had visited my house. For the rest of the night, my wife and kids were huddled in the basement and I sat on a chair in front of the closed basement door with the largest kitchen knife I owned in my hand. As soon as the power returned in the late AM, I called 911. The police took almost 10 minutes to arrive, but they took statements and descriptions from my family and stationed a patrol car outside of our house. None of us got any sleep that night. At around 10 AM, I got up to make myself coffee and my family some pancakes. I flipped on the TV to watch the news, desperate for a distraction. The heading at the bottom of the screen read, "Breaking News." A pretty, African-American news anchor stood in front of a suburban house, blocked off with police tape. There was more to the story, but I didn't need to hear it. That day, I bought a handgun and a new landline, guaranteed to work during power outages. After that night, my daughters didn't shriek with glee when the lights all went out.
Still here? Aw, look at you. Brave little meatbag. Too late to back out now. Next story's already watching.
These were words I never expected to hear from my therapist. Up to that point, she had always been on my side, despite the many flaws that made up my character. I had fleeting thoughts of suicide, but it was never something I intended to act upon. Sharing them with Dr. Covenwood was usually a comfort, something that her soothing voice and wisdom could easily dispel. Reciprocation never even occurred to me. She reached into her desk and pulled out a pamphlet, of which she handed to me. "People don't understand you, Jack. You're special. Let them live here in their ignorance. There's a better place for you. It's time to move on. This is your solution. A place where you can live without fear or worry. Leave tonight, Jack. Use this to do it. The portal will be opened, and you will travel into the next world. Trust me. It's for the best." No further words were spoken. She simply gestured for me to leave and then turned around in her chair, facing the wall. I would be lying if I said our strange conversation hadn't shaken me, but I still agreed to her terms and left, once again putting my life in her hands. Rational thinking was a luxury I hadn't had in many years. That night, in a zombie-like stupor, I prepared. I sent the appropriate, vague, goodbye messages to what family I had and sent my pet cat Harvey outside to roam free with the strays in the area. With that, I ventured to my bedroom, turned the lights off, laid down in bed, and got to it. Whilst laying there in a pool of warm liquid, waiting for my eternal slumber, I noticed something. My vision was beginning to blur, but I could see a figure at the foot of the bed. It was a man, cloaked in darkness, a shadowy statue painted into the room by an unseen brush. A single ray of moonlight outlined his form, allowing me a glimpse at some of his features. He had gray hair and looked to be around 50 years of age. Covering his body, a suit you might see in the closet of an esteemed professor. Across his face, a wicked grin that stretched from ear to ear. Though on the verge of death, I was still frightened, jarred by his presence. Sorry to scare you. It was necessary for the transition. Please, take a seat. I was amazed. Dr. Covenwood was speaking the truth. The next world was real, and I was ready to take my place inside, hopeful for a better existence. I nodded. Good. We can begin. The man handed me a blank sheet of paper and fountain pen. What's wrong? I asked. Collector. Yes. She sent many a patient to the next world, in hopes of easing their pain. Collectors are usually malevolent by nature, killing the innocent with our artifacts and feeding off of the energy expelled from the act. She's different. Her intentions are morally sound, but her actions still conflict with our code of conduct. She's even gone so far as to pass around non-sanctioned, printed material revealing privileged information about this place, as I'm sure you've seen. What does this mean, exactly? I asked. Shadowy figures loomed overhead. With them came voices. 3 distinct whispers in the dark. Voice 1, it's different than the rest. Voice 2, I'll prepare the fragmenter once the examination is complete. Voice 2, don't forget your training. Anguish is the energy that powers the next world. It is the payment we make in exchange for studying these creatures. Voice 3, I suppose that makes sense. Voice 2, I can't even begin to fathom what this type of being would experience in that time. I came to in a brightly lit room. It was spinning, but eventually stopped, revealing its design. It was a hospital room. I looked down and saw bandages all over me, covering the marks I had made with the tool Dr. Covenwood gifted me. It seemed I was somehow alive. Was it all a nightmare? I offered a half smile. This is going to sound strange, but can you please tell me? I am alive, aren't I? This isn't the afterlife. She smiled, but then bore a look of concern. Yes? I asked. She let out a sigh before resuming her query.
You're still tuned to Horror Slop. Frequency unknown. Stories endless. Let's spin the next nightmare.
Does anyone else remember this pop song from around 2008, by Hardijay? I frequent an alumni Facebook page for my school, and I posted a question on there asking if anyone remembered the song. The post got a bunch of likes and a lot of people started hitting me up about things they recall about Symmetry Icon's mysterious hit. One girl wrote to me that she couldn't remember how it went, but that the lyrics were kind of awkward and unconventional. Another classmate told me that the song was so catchy that it was stuck in his head for like weeks. A week went by since I had posted on the alumni page, and then I got a message from a guy that used to live in the dorm next to mine named Matt. Matt private messaged me asking if I found any leads about the song. I told him no. He told me that he had nothing but bad memories about that song. Here are his messages verbatim. Note, Paul was his dorm roommate. Me, that's good. Freaked out, I stopped talking about the song after that and just resumed making small talk with him until we both signed off. The next evening, not even 24 hours later, I come home from work to see people posting on Paul's Facebook wall with RIP and all sorts of condolences. Paul killed himself that day. I was horrified to hear that he had done it by stabbing himself in the face multiple times. And the thought that I was one of the last people he talked to made me feel even worse. Matt messaged me that day, too. It was because of the song. I'm sorry, Sal. It's not your fault. Symmetry Icon was a young 3-member pop group that started up in 2007 and came out with an album by 2008. Hard to believe 2008 is close to being a decade ago, but obviously you know how a lot of pop music was in that year. It was catchy, not too technical, upbeat but not very hardcore clubbish yet. Kinda cheesy synths and sounds. Look at Billboard's Top 100 for that year, you'll see what I mean. While Symmetry Icon was signed on for our label, their manager was an outside hire that came with them like a package deal. This guy was the definition of weird. He looked like a stereotypical slimy businessman. He was super close with the band, though, and they wouldn't drop him no matter what deals the label dangled in front of them. At every recording session and every meeting, that weird manager was right there, whispering into the band's ears. It felt like behind every song and every decision was that creepy guy. The band was even comfortable telling us that for the most part, their manager was coming up with the ideas for their songs. So, one day, the band misses a recording session because the lead singer's girlfriend is caught in a car accident that destroys her face. I had seen the girl before. She was absolutely beautiful, but after the accident she looked like a monster. No right eye, lips gone, a forehead that caved in. It was horrific, and she knew it too, so she unfortunately ended up killing herself, though I'm not sure exactly how. We were all very bummed about it at the studio. He said he'd rise us up. At first it was just little things. And then it came to this. I didn't think he'd take something that I'd actually miss. Bridge. I'll see you after, babe. Depressing stuff, yeah. At the studio we thought so, too. Plus, the chorus was 4 words and an incomplete sentence that went off into a 4-note riff, so we all doubted its potential. But we still recorded the entire song, mastered it, and sent it to the higher-ups who loved it and thought it'd be a big hit. One day during another session, their creepy manager barged into our studio and started screaming at Andrew and the band for releasing the song without his approval. Andrew started yelling right back about how he didn't want any of this, how he just wanted to play music and not get drawn into anything too serious. The manager was freaking out, saying the band would be nothing without him and how Andrew was the one who made the deal in the first place. I specifically remember Andrew saying, it was supposed to be just blood from us, not anyone else. The manager stormed out of the studio, going on about how he was going to ruin the song and the band for this. Said that he was gonna make anyone who liked the song end up like his, Andrew's, girlfriend. We never saw that guy again. Soon, the label and studio were both visited by these government types who wanted to see if everything was okay with our operation. Our CFO was interviewed about the nature of the track, and was told that something weird was going on with the people who were exposed to it for too long. I never heard exactly what the CFO was told, but the rumor was that people were offing themselves because they couldn't get it out of their heads. It affected some people more strongly than others, but those who did killed themselves in a very specific way that freaked the label out and pulled the song. With the help of those government guys, the label pulled "See You After, Babe" and removed any trace of its existence. The staff was never told exactly why, but for a lot of 2008 we heard stories of agents going to radio stations and stopping DJs from playing the track, even arresting those who persisted. As if this wasn't disturbing enough, we later heard that all 3 members of Symmetry Icon had killed themselves not long after the song was taken off the air. Apparently, they had sliced up their own faces with shards of glass and bled to death. They left a note saying that they'd never be able to top "See You After, Babe," and there was no point in trying. They were haunted by the song, and used to glass to try and dig it out. I'm not sure if you believe in the supernatural, but I am telling you right now that there is a shady reason why you can't find that song anywhere. It's some bad voodoo. It makes people do some fucked up things to themselves. I know you want to do this for your friend, and I'm sorry for your loss, but trust me when I say you will never find the full song. That shit is buried. For a long time, we were told to immediately let the company know if the song was played anywhere. I heard it in a dressing room at a mall one time when I was out shopping around mid-2010. I recorded it on my phone at the time to show my bosses, but kinda never got around to showing them. The issue hadn't been discussed in a bit over 2 years, and I never heard it again after that. I like to listen to it every now and then and think over all the things that happened because of it. Only listen a couple times and then never open the file again. Whatever happens with this song, it kicks in when you listen to it repeatedly. Please be careful. Brad Hoskins. I downloaded the file and listened to it immediately. I recognized the song the second I heard it. I have no idea whether or not Hoskins is telling the truth, so I put the clip up on YouTube and sent it to some friends to see if they recognize it. They all agree this was the song, including Matt. Does anyone else remember See You After, Babe, from 2008? I need to hear the whole song again, and it sucks knowing I never will.
Need a break? Too bad. These stories don't wait, and neither do we. Next one's worse, in the best way.
Long night? I ask. She looks up, timidly. Her face is awash in anxiety. She doesn't understand what's going on. She doesn't understand what she's doing here, sitting inside an abandoned warehouse with an asshole twice her age. It's fine. I've seen it before. No, and no. I lean back in the wooden chair, and it groans under my weight. I'm not as slim as I used to be. It's much simpler, I say. This warehouse is the safest place for you, because I'm inside of it. She studies me for several moments, and then shakes her head. On second thought, she says, picking up her purse. I think I prefer talking to the police. She stands up, makes to leave, and I don't stop her. Her footfalls echo across the empty warehouse, the haphazard lighting casting her shadow in every direction. I hear her mutter something beneath her breath, but I can't make out the words. I probably don't want to. Then, she stops. They always do. What's an event? She asks quietly. Yes, she says at length. It was in the woods. We were camping. I check 3 more boxes on my clipboard. Stupendous. So far the location matches up with previous sightings of the beast. I sigh, resting the clipboard in my lap and place my pen on top of it. Why don't we start from the top? Before we do, she says, narrowing her eyes. How do I know I can trust you? This feels so bizarre. I offer. Badges can be faked. I bring a hand to my face, tracing along deep scars. How about these? You don't get these working for television. She's quiet, skeptical, and her eyes drift down to the clipboard on my lap. She's analyzing it. Determining if it's a real government form or not. All things I've seen before. She wants to believe, but she isn't ready yet. Let me ask you this, I say, handing her the clipboard. She begins looking it over. When you told the search and rescue team a monster attacked you, did they believe you? Her eyes meet mine, and I see it, the surrender. She knows as well as I do that I'm her only shot. What she doesn't know, is she's my only shot too. I've been looking for this legend for close to 40 years now. She passes the clipboard back to me and I click my pen, bringing it to the box labeled encounter. Alright. You said that you were camping. Who was with you? Just Rachel, she says. Her eyes are filled with something. Guilt, maybe. We've been friends since elementary school. We hiked together pretty often. Ah, I say, noting her name on my clipboard. Rachel Tully, correct? The victim. Amanda nods. We went up to get a break from the doldrums of city life. Rachel just got out of a pretty serious relationship, and I didn't want her cooped up in that apartment, stuck with all those memories. Her voice cracks. Emotion spills into her words. I suggested we take the weekend and go for a hike into the Cascades. There's an old trail we spotted the last time we were up there, just off the main path. I said we could follow that, see where it leads us. I don't know. It was a really old trail, overgrown in parts. There weren't any mile markings. I whistle, scratching at my gut. That's quite the walk. My heart pounds in my chest. I swallow the excitement before it has a chance to leak into my voice. I'd gone looking for that cabin 100 times. It was never there. A cabin? She nods. Her eyes leave mine, they're gazing off at some distant point on the ground, transfixed. She's replaying the memory. We figure it must have been an old ranger cabin, which would explain the overgrown trail that led us there. She pauses, her mouth hanging open, words struggling to break free. Rachel suggests instead of using our tents, we could just stay inside of it. I remind her the windows are busted and it's the middle of November. Plus, it's probably filled with spiders. She says all the better. Let's set up our tents inside the cabin. Double the protection. The layout sounds familiar. I can almost smell the cedar and feel the toasty warmth of the wood stove burning during cold December evenings. Interesting. Screaming. I lean forward, my pen scratching at the clipboard. It feels too early for the callous man to appear. Certain criteria haven't been met. Still, if the work of my late colleagues has taught me anything, it's that legends can evolve. I keep an open mind. I look toward it, but I don't see her there. I jog over, wondering what the fuck is going on, when I catch sight of the floorboards inside of it. They're busted. Splintered and shattered. There's a dark hole in the ground, one big enough for a man to fit through. I almost have a heart attack when her arm reaches out of the blackness. Amanda closes her eyes, takes a deep breath. She shouts at me to get her out of there. I tell her to give me a second, and I take off my jacket and put it over the jutting pieces of broken floorboards, because I don't want her getting impaled on the things, and then I reach down and pull her up. She's bawling her eyes out, hyperventilating, and once she's firmly out of the pit, she's pointing to her foot. I ask her if she's hurt, and she tells me thinks she twisted her ankle. Pieces of Amanda's event are beginning to connect in my mind. The twisted ankle. The panicked friend. They're all familiar ingredients, and the end dish is anything but delicious. She keeps whimpering about dead things. Over and over. Dead things. Dead things. Dead things. I'm wondering if I just became a party to my best friend having a psychotic break, but I give her the benefit of the doubt and check out the hole. It's dark enough that I can't see the bottom, so I flick on my phone's light. Her fingers play at the tips of her hair. Tugging at it. It takes me a bit for my eyes to adjust, but once they do, my blood goes cold. There's bones littering the ground. Deer bones. Rabbit bones. Then there, at the edge of my vision, I catch sight of a human skull. I'm swearing up a storm, and my imagination's going haywire. Rachel's hysterical, and I'm feeding into it. Both of us are repeating the words, "what the fuck," like it's a personal mantra. Amanda takes a breath, holding it for a few moments. There's goosebumps on her arms. Even reciting the account is beginning to work her up. She exhales. Then I remember I'm not living inside of a horror movie. I remember what I thought Rachel was screaming about in the first place. I tell her to relax, that it's probably just a mountain lion, or grizzly's dumping ground. In the basement? I ask. I check a box on my form. The story matches up, so far at least. The cabin is identical to the one in my memories. The question is, did she really encounter the callous man, or some rabid wolf? A human skull is a promising detail, but it's not like predators don't occasionally snack on hikers. There's a crack of thunder in the distance. I walk over to the windows, and see the sun turning a blood red, setting over the tree line. Storm clouds are rolling in. Rain starts pitter-pattering on the cabin roof. Rachel's groaning in pain, and she shows me her phone. It doesn't have service either. You were picked up by a search and rescue team, weren't you? Amanda sighs. I was just about to get to that, actually. There's an undercurrent of annoyance in her tone. She clearly doesn't care for interruptions once she gets going. I lean back in my chair. All the better for me. Like I said, Rachel and I go on these sort of hikes pretty often. Me more than her, but still. I come prepared. All-weather clothing, bear mace, flint and steel. You name it, I got it. I don't cut corners, so I made sure to pack my GPS locator beacon. It sends a one-way distress signal. Ah, I say, noting it in the report. A survivalist. Hear me out. Amanda's eyes connect with mine, and there's a pleading expression on her face. A desperation to be understood. Rachel wasn't in any immediate danger. Not then. Neither of us were. Plus, a storm was rolling in, and it looked like a big one. Amanda gets quiet. She's staring at me, and there's that same look I've seen 1,000 times before. It works. She perks up. Yeah, I suppose. I decide to put an extra layer between us and the front door though. Just in case. I clear out the busted bed frame and sweep the splinters from the bedroom floor, then I get to work setting up the tent. Her voice dies. Memories are calling to her again. Difficult memories. What happened? I ask, the hairs on my arms rising. Did you see something? I lick my lips. Yes. This is very promising. My pen scratches at the clipboard in excitement. The callous man has a defining characteristic, one unique to him in the realm of legends. He always comes from the same direction. Always. Which way were the animals running? It takes her a second to get the words out. They're uncomfortable for her. Disturbing. All of them, she whispers. It was like an exodus of life. My heart hammers, my breath quickens. All of it, each detail of her story means one thing. The callous man is coming.
Sleeping yet? Didn't think so. Next story's up. And yeah, it's worse. You're welcome.
I try and look for the cigarette butts. Nowhere to be found. Peer out the window. Mr. Rowland stands in the front garden, in his tattered old suit, staring back up at me. He sways slightly, old age, I guess, and raises a hand in a half-wave half-salute. I don't wave back. 7:30 a.m. The kids don't drink their juice, nor eat their cereal, just bicker in that way kids can, making stupid facial expressions at each other, and I've got no time for it, really, no time at all, and so I shout at them, which I regret now, honest, and pour the OJ all over their laps and say if you're going to act like children. 7:45 a.m. I walk to work. It does not take very long. I make small incisions on the soft pad of each of my fingertips so that I wince whenever I hold a pen or press a key on a keyboard. Roger comes into work. We spend the first hour or so going over the cargo. He wears plastic gloves and I use my bare hands, and he says that's gross, that's weird, and I argue that look, if you've got such a problem with it, why don't you fucking call head office and whine to them? That shuts him up. We make our notes, tick all the correct boxes. Roger goes upstairs to get us coffee, and someone from upper management comes downstairs. 10:30 a.m. We are watching. We are waiting. There is something that crawls beneath that we have to liberate, and our skin is a cage and our mouths are pretty flowers. Ha. Wrong number, I guess. 11:30 a.m. What a bitch. Say it with me, all one word, what a bitch. That is, until, Delia, you guessed it, tells me to move on. To keep working. 1:30 p.m. 2:30 p.m. Upper management take me into a little room upstairs for a quick chat. They're all wearing masks, these black cloth sacks over their heads. I think it's a prank, but I go along with it anyway. I skin the whole goat. Or whatever the damn phrase is. You know what I mean. 2:45 p.m. 3 p.m. Can I take a donation? He asks. Yeah, Roger, what's this for? He frowns. You know this, you know exactly what it's for. I blink. Roger shakes his head. When she died, she said it would mean the world if we all donated a bit. She battled with it all her life, man. Delia winks at me from the corner, runs her tongue over her teeth. Another cup of coffee. 4 p.m. 4:30 p.m. I take a piss. Consider going number 2, but I prefer to save that for when I get home. When you think about it, if you're kissing someone for 20 whole seconds, that's a pretty damn long kiss. 5 p.m. Please don't end workday, please don't end, please don't end. I imagine myself naked and bound to the hand of a giant clock, and beneath me is this vast and churning ocean slowly rising, and all I can do is hold my breath and pray that there's nothing in the water and that I am alone. Mr. Rallens is outside my house still, stood on the lawn, swaying, and I shout, "Hello, Mr. Rallens." And he says nothing back. He's just swaying and muttering in that broken old voice of his, "Help me, oh God, help me, please God, help me." I take out a stack of plates from the cupboard and throw them one by one at the wall and then collect myself. Sorry. That was rash of me. That was, over the top. Hello. What was all that noise about? Mr. Rallens is still going on about needing help. Sorry, sir, you can't come in. I shrug, and coded in that shrug is anything every man understands instantly, women, huh? Rocket lies by the door, all glassy-eyed. No plates to eat it on either, so I eat off the floor and pile the food between my crossed legs. You're right. Shoe stores are weird, ha ha ha. Why do they hit the shoe once they've put it on? And after they've tied it up so damn tight? I pour boiling water on my belly. I wonder if there's one about how to understand women. That would be a hoot. 9:30 p.m. Waste not, want not. I'm half asleep but I can hear them bring someone upstairs. Is that Roger's voice? And he's whimpering and squealing like a stuck pig, and I think they bleed him like one too, but I don't see it, just hear it. A slick sound like scissors through paper, and then a wet splashing sound like spilt orange juice, and then convulsions, and then nothing. I try and look for the cigarette butts. Nowhere to be found.
Still with us? Good. That last one was just the warm-up. Let's go deeper.
Sorry to ramble. It's just that what's the word for it? Don't look at the pictures. Don't even touch the file. You'll thank me. Interviewer, we've got to go official now, Hob. Can you confirm for the record that you're waiving your right to an attorney? No, I'm still not interested in an attorney. Sorry. Interviewer, are you sure? Yes. They're not showing that to a jury. Interviewer, what led you to the crime scene on the night in question? Would you believe I was planning a fishing trip before this started? Never mind. Hard to organize it. I guess it started with the reporter. Name of Bamer. She contacted me a week ago by email and claimed she had new information on the Driscoll murders. I was the lead investigator. The case had gone unsolved for 20 years. Cold as ice. Frankly, I thought it was all bullshit at first. You know how that can be. Most of the time it's not even on purpose. Everyone thinks they know something that will crack a case wide open. Theories are easy when you don't have to check them against evidence. The Driscoll murders were a big story around these parts. Lots of interest. Lots of press. Over the years, I must have gotten a couple hundred shit theories. I still thought she might be pulling my leg, or maybe she had been fooled too, but she had a file with her. Looked legit. It contained what appeared to be a confession by the Driscoll. Well, he wasn't a murderer, was he? I really do wish he had been, you know. Interviewer, can you please fill us in on the relevant details of the Driscoll case? Let's see, it would have been 20 years ago now. Thinking of all those years. I mean, 20 goddamn years. That's a long time to be. Thanks. We settled, unhappily, on the idea of a random killing. Hardest pieces of shit to catch when there's no pattern like that. We must have sunk tens of thousands of man-hours into this case, chasing down leads. Nothing ever came of any of it. The Driscolls had been knocked out and abducted. Like I said, no one ever found the bodies. Who was to say they hadn't just run off? She'd been following the case for some years, both personally and as a reporter. Like I said, it captured the imagination of a lot of people. Even seemingly normal folks thought it could have been aliens, ghosts or demons. Miss Bamer published a retrospective on the murders given the 20-year anniversary. It caused a renewed interest, which happened from time to time. As usual, I declined to comment, citing lack of new evidence. I remembered her asking for my quote though, which is why I accepted the lunch meeting. She stated the confession had been mailed to her in the same envelope she showed to me when we met for lunch. Interviewer, can you describe its contents? No, I'm fine for now. I don't want anything to interfere with my recollection for your recording. As to the confession letter, well, it was brief. It gave an address. That's the first thing I noticed. I couldn't locate the address online, which meant it had to be old. The confession letter said, "Stop printing lies. I never killed anyone. It just took a while to get them ready for breakfast." There was no signature. I just remembered something. God damn it. We got sent a breakfast menu a month after the disappearance. Someone had drawn a red circle around a picture of pancakes. The letter said, "They're not dead, they're getting ready for breakfast." We put it in the junk lead file. Oh God. Interview, Detective Milgate, do you need a moment? Dear God. Interviewer, why did you decide to personally investigate the location mentioned in the letter? Sorry. I wanted to make sure it wasn't a hoax. I still wasn't convinced. I've had 20 years of people sending me fake evidence. I guess maybe the case captured my imagination too. I always figured one day I'd think of something I'd overlooked and solve the whole thing. Felt unbelievable to have someone dump the answer in my lap. I needed to see with my own 2 eyes. Miss Baymer and I agreed to meet there the following morning. Yes. Gagging. Sorry. I thought I was empty. I hadn't forgotten how to pick a lock, so I let myself inside. Please say you believe me. Interviewer, I do. Can you describe the interior of the building? The warehouse had not been as abandoned as we were previously led to believe. The interior had a hallway with 6 rooms. The construction was old but visibly newer than the rest of the building. The walls between each room had been soundproofed. There were no windows to the outside or doorways between the rooms themselves. The only access was through the hallway. I tried to make Miss Baymer leave at that point. You see, the smell was stronger, inside. You could feel it, the smell. Like a grit getting stuck in your nose. Like bits of sand all over your skin. That's how he kept them alive for so long, of course. I think I might be seeing black spots. The idea of having to start this again is worse than the idea of finishing it. Sorry, I'm rambling. There were some stairs at the very far end of the warehouse descending into a basement. I told Miss Baymer to remain behind and pulled my service revolver. I had a flashlight on my person as well, and turned it on as I descended into the basement. I'm 64 years old, for Christ's sake. I'm not a young man who can forget things anymore. When you're young you have this sense that you're invincible and that you're never going to die. I don't have that to protect me anymore. It's my fault. I should have found them. Saved them, somehow. I can. 20 goddamn years of torture, basically. Interviewer, what did they say? Avery was 14 when he disappeared. I switched it. It increased the volume of air to the topmost hose. I could hear the pump working harder. Which is when Avery Driscoll started to scream. He begged me to kill him. He said other things too. He didn't make much sense. Kept yelling "Bane of Error" over and over again. Something about the family, too. Didn't understand it. He was in pain and I would hope he had gone insane several years previously. You see, they had not been able to speak to one another for 20 years. Do you know what the screams of 6 people tortured over 2 decades, smashed down to a width of 4 inches sounds like when they're all stacked on top of one another? Interviewer, I think that is enough, Detective Milgate. I shot them. Mercy is hard, but I owed it to them. I am the one that failed to save them. It only took 1 bullet to go all the way through. I emptied my revolver, though. To make sure they didn't linger. To give them that final piece. Interviewer, yes, of course. Interviewer, of course. Do you know where she is now? She told the lead at the crime scene she was going home, but we haven't been able to reach her. Did you try the paper? Interviewer, which paper? The Daily World.
Whew, telling gave me chills. But hey, we're just getting started. The next one's sharper. You'll see.
My number neighbor just messaged me, but they weren't doing it for the trend, by not applicable. For the first time in a little over a month, I received a text message yesterday morning. When I first saw the number that messaged me, I thought I had gone crazy. I thought it was my number, but after examining it a little closer the second time, I noticed that our number was the same except for the last number. Then I remembered about the dumb little number neighbor trend, so I rolled my eyes and opened up the text, fully prepared to block the number, but what was written was what stopped me. Sorry, but I don't have a lot of time to explain. I can't access my internet, and my call won't even go through with 911. Please. This is my address. Sorry, I won't write the address here. Will you please call 911 for me and tell them that there is someone in my house? After I got off the phone, I sent a message back. I tried texting everyone on my contact list, but the messages weren't going through. I got desperate and decided to text every number I could think of. You're the only one that messaged back. I hope the cops get here soon. I'm hiding in the closet. I think they already killed my husband and kids. The officer sighed and the line was silent for a couple of seconds before he responded back. Against my better judgment, I tried calling the number that messaged me, but after the second ring, I was sent to voicemail. I tried calling 4 more times after, but it did the same thing each time. A man and his little kid. A couple of seconds later my phone vibrated in my pants. I took my phone out and saw that there was a text. So I'm posting on here, hoping that maybe this site will work. I live on 168. I'm a dumbass who thought I could post my address when I type it in. Fuck. God damn it, it keeps writing that whenever I write my address. When an unknown number messages you, don't message back. Fuck, don't get involved. Just call the cops and leave it alone.
Sleeping yet? Didn't think so. Next story's up. And yeah, it's worse. You're welcome.
Any or all of the above. Something about your first child changes you in the head, I guess. Here I was thinking about football, getting an oil change, and what was for dinner. Then less than 24 hours later, I'm coming home with Hannah and a brand new little human in her arms. And that's when I became solely focused on getting Dada. Of course, Hannah was just as anxious to hear Mama, and that usually comes first. The M's are easier for babies to say. Dada, say Dada. I'd say, just inches from his beaming face. Blah 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 babble, Eddie would respond. It was months into Eddie's life, when we finally got his first real word. Bug? Are you kidding me? Bug, Eddie squealed. No. Did you? Of course not. It must be in one of his toys or songs. That's so strange. Hannah and I celebrated Bug with nearly the fervor as we might have Mama or Dada, expertly hiding our dismay for Eddie's sake. Bug, Eddie said again. And I bleep you not, Eddie was reaching toward one of those bugs that you see skittle across the floor from time to time. They're called carpet beetles, I think. And of course, they're totally harmless. Bug. Okay, Eddie, okay. Bug bug bug, Eddie rattled off, the most excited I'd ever seen him. I think it's actually pretty impressive that he would identify that. I almost got my phone to record it, but that's when his outburst began. Bug, bug, bug. I stepped over to Eddie as his voice got louder, probably the loudest I'd ever heard outside of his routine crying. Bug. Eddie killed the beetle with a clenched fist. Eddie hadn't said bug since he killed the carpet beetle. He actually has a new word. Coco. It's kind of cute, though. The two of them have certainly formed a unique bond. Like that Pixar short that was before, well, I actually forget which movie they paired that one with. Eddie calls for Coco, and Coco usually will approach within a few feet. At least, we thought that was the case. It was a Sunday afternoon. I was half watching football while Hannah was out shopping. Every few seconds, I'd check on Eddie and make sure he was enjoying himself, not getting into trouble and so on. Sooner or later though, I had to use the restroom. It literally took me 2 minutes, maybe less. Coco, Coco, Coco. Coco. It had been a few days since Eddie had a Coco burst like that. It was audible throughout the house. She was crushed. We loved that little dog. Yeah. Coco just took a nap and didn't wake up. That's for the best, she said. I guess we were expecting that sooner or later. I checked over my shoulder one more time before leaving the room. She wasn't suspicious in the slightest. Out of respect for Hannah's squeamishness, and trying to avoid a rather gruesome truth, I'd spared her the details. I'd outright lied. Coco hadn't passed in his sleep. The toddler was squeezing the life out of the poor animal. By the time I'd reached Eddie and separated Coco from his vice grip, the pup had gone limp. Eddie's breath slowed. He looked up at me and just smiled. Coco. Eddie answered. I still hadn't processed it, honestly. Eddie killing the bug was a fluke, but this was strange. I dropped everything and jogged back to the living room, my pulse suddenly racing. Are you okay? I looked down at Eddie, confused. Our eyes met. My jaw dropped. She added, "Oh, I'm so jealous. You're so lucky. Dada. Dada." He's saying it. Wow. The child reached his arms out toward me.
Anyway, let's lighten the mood with something fun and... Nah, just kidding. It gets worse. Hit it.
As the weeks went on, she spent more and more time filming these eating videos. We paid off the remainders on our auto loan. We put down a good chunk on our mortgage. We were able to start a college fund for Marcia. Our savings account was looking healthier than ever. Her health, however, wasn't looking too hot. She'd begun to lose breath quicker than usual. Eventually she stopped coming on our family walks in the park. It wasn't a big deal, just a couple times a week we would go to stretch our legs. After a while she said she would prefer to stay home for the time being. At this point I started to get a bit more concerned. No amount of money is worth throwing away your health, even if our insurance would cover whatever came up. I remember talking to her about it, that maybe she should slow down with her project and maybe even cut it off entirely. She was furious with me, she cried, she asked me if I still loved her, of course I told her I do. I did. She was the love of my life, she'd given us our beautiful daughter. I caved in and just pleaded with her to be careful. Our cat disappeared 1 month ago. It happened on a night when I had taken Marcia out to the playground. Carol had texted me. "I am hungry. Bring me something, now." I texted back that we were at the park. We wouldn't be back for another half hour or so. I was so fucking terrified. I could not go in and feed her that last day. I could hear her screaming. Then she called for our daughter. Marcia went in. Marcia did not come out. I got worried. I opened the door. I saw Marcia's foot laying at the base of the monster that used to be my wife. She ate my daughter, oh God, she ate my daughter. When I saw it I couldn't move for what felt like hours, but I know it wasn't. The monster saw my look of horror. I don't know what happened. I saw the monster move for the first time since it consumed my wife I don't know how many months ago. It heaved itself off its perch, it almost seemed to slither, drag itself over towards the door. It couldn't fit through the doorframe. It pressed hard against it. Oh my God, I couldn't move. The doorframe of the office began to creak horribly and bulge outwards before I came to. I ran, I got in the car, I drove. I'm out now. Oh my God, my daughter, what happened to my wife, what have I done?
You're still tuned to Horror Slop. Frequency unknown. Stories endless. Let's spin the next nightmare.
Behind it all, my family has kept a secret, one that has been gnawing away at us for generations. Every single one of us is cursed. Some more than others. And number X200B. Howard, my oldest brother, is the most cursed. He has always been a selfless man. And me, I fall somewhere in the middle. And number X200B. Our curses come yearly on the 10th of December, and we get to decide who among us will take them on. That's the extent of our control. My husband begged to take my place last year, but I declined. I could never let him do that. How my parents carry on day to day with it in the house, I don't know. Emicham. Neither can your folks. I rolled my back to him, not wanting to get into it right now. I already knew I was doomed to a night without sleep, I at least wanted it to be quiet. He continued, hushed. Liz is pregnant, so she's out. Anne. Richie, is it? He got a real bad one, so it's not fair he takes another. John can't cause, well, he has issues. So who does that leave? Babe, please, just leave it, okay? We can do this tomorrow. Please, just. No more. He kissed the back of my head. And me. Mom brought in the yellow book, our tattered guide to some of the curses compiled by someone or something, probably when all of this began. It had been added to by a very long line of descendants over the years, as well. She placed it on the coffee table and took a seat, hissing as she did so. Her very last curse had not been written in the book, which left us in a scary limbo for fear of accidentally breaking a rule. In time we realized it was a physical curse that had manifested as rheumatoid arthritis. We added it to the passages. Abby scooted onto the floor, staring up at Pi eagerly. I can do this one, if you guys want me to. She was so brave, so much like her uncle and her father. Richie immediately began to sign in her general direction. Helen, my big sister, dressed in all black since her last curse vetoed colored clothing, put a soothing arm on him. Richie began signing some insulting things about John's life choices, and John sneered back. Hey now, Dad began but interrupted himself with a coughing fit. This silenced everyone. He continued after getting a hold of himself. We don't fight. We make a decision. No more, no less. Got it? Dad stared at each of us pointedly. He was the no-nonsense, rip the band-aid off type all my life. I knew, though, that it was a front. Last night I heard him pacing right up until sunrise, and there was no doubt in mind he had been doing it long before we arrived. The dark crevices under his eyes betrayed him. Howard held up a hand. Everyone stared at him surprised, yet not. I can take another. No, you cannot, mister, said Mom, her eyes immediately tearing up. My baby sister, Liz, made circles on her growing belly with a fingertip. Nate seemed hypnotized by it, his eyes full of love. Sam, Ollie warned. I stood, but Ollie stood quicker. I'll do it. He stated. Here, right? I just put my hand in here dash. He stared hard at me. He could overpower me, and I could tell he was considering it. You made me a promise, Oliver. I take promises very seriously. I get to choose when you take one. Don't break this promise. Don't do that to me. John scoffed and wiped his nose, about to launch into some kind of rant. Dad shot him a look and he immediately shut up. I turned and faced Pi. Circular eyes seemed to bore into me. I looked over my shoulder at Howard, his expression even and stoic in what I needed to continue. I stepped forward, hand out and flat, and slid it into the void. Suddenly the memory of Richie receiving his last curse invaded my mind. Ollie scooted to the edge of the sofa. What is it? Small and black, like an ink stain, it was the rough shape of a diamond. In a few months it would be gone, soaked up, unlike the curse it represented. That was forever. What? I asked, voice pitching. Just tell me. Ollie squeezed my hand. His was sweating. 30 million heartbeats, Mom uttered. It means, I stammered. It means, that's what I have left dash. I'm right. See? Abby smiled widely. It's not a million heartbeats. It's this one, sleep foot east. Foot east. I repeated, double-checking my marking against the curses. I closed the book with a soft thud and stared at Abby and then Ollie. It matches. Oh my God, Mom breathed shakily. I'm so sorry. I thought. These old eyes of mine. I leaned over and hugged her. It's all right. I'm very thankful for your old eyes, right now. And number X200B. Outside, we each bid each other farewell and exchanged the usual, stay safe, look out for your curses. John was the first to leave, even though Mom and Dad asked him to stay the night. Then Richie, Helen, and Abby. I hugged Abby extra tight. Nate and Liz left next. I said the final goodbyes to my parents. Dad had another coughing fit, and I waited with him until it was under control. Go on, enjoy the year as best you can. He ordered me. Ollie and I got in the car. He took my hand and ran his thumb over my mark. I still can't believe all of this is real, sometimes. We exchanged warm smiles. He was just trying to cheer me up and I appreciated it, but inside I couldn't stop thinking about my curse.
Still here? Aw, look at you. Brave little meatbag. Too late to back down now. Next story's already watching.
There was ocean water in the swimming pool, by Adelaide of the Pasture. Even in the pool water and sweltering heat, her lips remained a vibrant red. I knew it was creepy to watch my neighbor swimming, but I just didn't know how to talk to her. She climbed up on the side of the pool for a rest, singing something sweet but muffled as she combed her fingers through her hair. I didn't even know if she was into girls or not. With a creak, I pushed the window open a little to hear her singing. "Don't go in the pool yet. I'm getting drinks," she yelled from inside the house. Shivering with both cold and fear, I pulled the strange tendrils off of my leg. They were dark and stringy. With a jolt I recognized what it was. Human hair. I looked into the pool. Nothing was there. "I thought I told you not to go into the pool." Her voice had a beautiful sing-song quality even when she was mad. The water was just as cold as ever. She led me to the middle, where it was the deepest. I was never great at swimming, and as I struggled to stay afloat the water surged into my nose and mouth. It tasted salty. Like ocean water. A pair of cold, dead eyes stared back at me. I yelped, letting my breath escape in a rush of bubbles. I kept my eyes open as I tore through the water. The water seemed infinite, definitely beyond the proportions of the swimming pool. All around me dead bodies were suspended and upright under the surface. Some had pieces missing, as though something had been eating them. When I finally broke through the surface the atmosphere was strangely calm. I heard the hum of lawnmowers in the distance as I desperately sucked air back into my lungs. My arms were shaking as I pulled myself out of the pool. I looked back into the water. Nothing was there. Now, as I'm sitting here writing this, I can still hear her singing her siren song.
Need a break? Too bad. These stories don't wait, and neither do we. Next one's worse. In the best way.
There Are No Doors on My New House, by I. M. Howard Moxley. An NBSP. The 4-bedroom, 3-bath house was amazing compared to what I had seen: running water, working electrical, nice hardwood floors, no mold, no rot. Someone must have taken all the doors very recently, even the front and back ones, and nothing else. Not even the copper handles and taps. An NBSP. I waited for the real estate agency to send someone out for the official show. I was expecting someone in a real estate-owned graphic-wrapped car and a friendly smile. What I got was the world's most filthy van driven by the world's sketchiest, skeeziest and skitziest driver creaking to a stop right in front of me. A woman rushed up from within and pushed her face against the glass of the van's side windows. It was hard to hear her, but I think she said, "An NBSP. Over there all the time, and they said they lost a man, and Johnny never lost a man because Johnny went to war and brought men back, but they looked and they lost that man. They looked up and down and they couldn't find him, and they knew he was there but he wasn't because he put doors up, same as Sam. She went into one and." An NBSP. Doors. Johnny went into the back room to talk to Lori, who went through the kitchen to get to the room. Both lost. And Johnny never lost anyone, the doors. The driver seemed to panic and took off with a screech as a new real estate-owned graphic-wrapped car pulled to a stop with the paperwork and deed to the house. I didn't let one old burnout's bad trip story scare me. An NBSP. The area was cheap enough for me to rent a room in for a bit while I arranged for a contractor to come and put the doors on. All of the well-established and more reputable firms in the area wouldn't even stay on the phone as soon as I said my address. One was kind enough to laugh and stay on long enough to ask, "You must be from outstate, hearing about one of those cheap houses, eh? That's where those kids went missing a while back, well, 20-year-olds. Everyone sees him go into one of the rooms, nobody sees them leave. Some folks been trying to move in there for at least the past decade, but most leave not long after. Seen the police there a few times. If I were you, I would unload it to the next sucker and get out. It's cheap for a reason." An NBSP. I got a call from the on-site super, Bran, 2 days later to tell me he and his crew are pulling out and issuing a credit, without legitimate reason. They sounded spooked and only said they refused to go into the back room, without legitimate reason. An NBSP. I raced back to the house hoping to catch them still there to ask what was going on. I was happy to see their work truck still here, but the men were not in the house. I decided to check the back room to see what was wrong with it. An NBSP. The back room was the only one near the back door, a strange offshoot that had its own bathroom, a washer and dryer and 2 couches crowded with old ragdolls that the former owners left. The men hadn't installed any doors except for the front and back doors, and ones on the back room. An NBSP. The only thing out of place in the back room, other than the creepy ragdolls, was Bran's cell phone still open with only 4% life left, enough for me to see it had tried to make 350 calls in 2 hours. They recorded 15 minutes of videos broken up into 2 to 3 minute segments. I watched the longest of the videos first. An NBSP. They ran through the front door, and into a kitchen, and through the den, all in a line when they shouldn't have been. They finally arrived to the back room, but all of the ragdolls were gone from the couch. The men off-screen gasped and the cameraman murmured, "Oh my God," as the camera was about to point at what they were looking at. The phone died. An NBSP. My fingers were able to slip in just in time before the door closed. I swear I could feel the house trying to force the door closed, but I forced more. The front door was also closing on its own, by design of malicious intent, I can't say, but it was closing fast. I swear I saw a corner of my own bedroom starting to form outside before my foot kicked the door outward to the real world. An NBSP. Now there are no doors on my house.
Whew, telling gave me chills. But hey, we're just getting started. The next one's sharper. You'll see.
I Have a Sister My Parents Don't Know About, by Ease Misery. Long to go play in the sunny park. My dark sister would smile and take my hand. From beneath the covers of her bed, Shirley began to have full conversations with her dark sister. She would spend the mornings weaving brilliant stories and the afternoons lamenting over their desperate condition. One day her mother came into the room, a bowl of barley soup in her hands. "Who are you talking to?" she asked, sitting on the chair beside Shirley's bed. "Oh, no one," Shirley replied, happy to have a secret for herself. "Just swallow it and you can tell me after." "Just spilled soup. I'll get it." She bent down and began to wipe up what remained of the soup. "No. Something is seriously down there." Her mother laughed. "You truly are a baby again, aren't you? Shall mommy take a look and scare off the bad monster?" Shirley stewed in her anger. "Never mind. I'll just rest now." "Good baby needs her nap," her mother joked. She whistled some children's song as she exited, closing the door behind her. Shirley sighed the deep sigh of loneliness. She closed her eyes, attempting to sleep. Crawling up the end of the bed was a girl made mostly of bones. She had jet black skin and white eyes. She moved as if in pain, pulling herself up and over. When her hand touched Shirley's leg, she began to emit small waves of smoke, like she was being burned. Shirley only felt an immense coldness. The girl slithered over Shirley, laying herself down. Her face was exactly the same as Shirley's. The girl moved her jaw around as if she had never spoken before. "Ma, pa, shun," desperately she pointed to the door. "Kill, Shirley." The monster put her head down. "Never, leaf, ing." Shirley did the only thing she could think of, she began to scream. The girl's eyes grew large and she rolled off of Shirley and onto the ground, skittering beneath the bed. Shirley kept screaming until her mother came in running. A monster. She lives beneath my bed. Shirley Hardy Jackson, you stop telling tales. I'll send your father in to look after you while I make the soup. She shook her and turned to leave. Shirley saw a black arm reach out from under the bed. It pointed at her mother. In a small voice it whispered, "Kill, Shirley. Ma, pa, shun." She heard clicks from beneath her. Yes. Yes. Poi shun. Her father paused for a second. Shirley imagined the thoughts that swirled in his head. His love for his wife, his inability to give her another baby, his secret and his relief of finally being found out. He walked to her bedside. Quickly, before she realizes. Years later, after the trial and the rehabilitation, Shirley re-entered her childhood home. She could walk now, but the poison had done serious damage to her muscles. When she moved it looked like a monster might move, off-kilter and slow. Her aunt was there with her, helping her go through the house to find what she wanted to keep and what she wanted to discard. Shirley opened the door and was immediately accosted by the sunflower wallpaper. How many times did she count those flowers? How many hours were spent in agony, trapped in that room? She walked to the bed and sat upon it. The mattress was so familiar. She bounced a bit, a smile slowly making its way to her face. "Are you here, sister?" Only silence responded. "Myself and my sister in the dark. Long to go play in the sunny park." My dark sister would smile and take my hand. A dark hand reached out and took Shirley's, holding on tight. Shirley could not contain her joy. Her sister crawled out from beneath the bed, able to move so much easier now. She stood, locking eyes with Shirley. The smiles echoed on each other's faces.
Something's still listening, and it wants more. Next story. Just don't say its name.
I'm Patricia Barnes, hitman for ghosts that only I can see. This is how I deal with people who piss me off, by Beifel's Disciple. It wouldn't catch. The dancing light was just enough to illuminate a vivid crimson sheen on my fingertips that extended its damp reach to my cancer stick. Looking around the room, I got a feel for the shape of the path in front of me. Then I flicked out the light. This is why I yearned for brown underwear in my first few years on the job. Moonlight streamed through the window just well enough to light up her face. Or, more accurately, what was left of her face. The top left chunk of the woman's head was split wide open. White and gray tendrils dazzled in the moonlight as I looked deep into her shattered skull. One eyeball hung loosely from its optic nerve. It jiggled on her cheek as she spoke. I scowled. "Look, honey, I'm really on edge right now. I'm sure the cops have found the last woman I killed by this point. I just failed a dead girl, there has been an appalling lack of naked man ghosts as of late, and my cigarettes have been destroyed by all the blood. Are you going to tell me more about this axe, or should I just burn the fucking house down?" I grabbed the knob. "Listen, Mindy. I've gone 20 minutes without a smoke, and this waste of skin is the reason." I threw open the door. "I'm going to react poorly." Instead, he reached into a pile of soiled underwear that was festering by his head and pulled out an extraordinarily large pistol. He pointed it at my face and smiled. I stared at the length of the gun's barrel. "Makes sense," I offered coolly. "I don't know what you're doing in my bedroom, 'cause I don't fuck old meat," he slurred as he got to his wobbly feet. The man kept the gun aimed at my head, so I didn't move. "I'm here to deliver a message from Mindy." I closed my eyes and sighed. Of course it was Starla. I mean Starla. I'm here to talk to you about the girlfriend you murdered. You've never seen a woman stand up after hitting her, have you? I asked as I wiped my sleeve against my lip to clean the blood. I panted. Fuck, my face hurt. Get up to speed quick, because we have to talk about how Starla told me that you buried her beneath the house. You thought that no one would find out, but I can see more than you'll ever imagine. My world spun with residual dizziness, and I adjusted my footing for balance. He used to tell me that I was the only one who made him feel less ashamed, the woman whispered from the corner. I could tell that she was crying. The look on his face told me that he didn't understand why I was talking to someone he couldn't see, which only increased his anger. For fuck's sake. Couldn't he have remembered her favorite flower? No. Of course not. Starla knows that you're the best thing that ever happened to her, I explained softly. She wants you to be safe, I continued in a nurturing tone. Everyone's in danger. We're about to be attacked by foreigners. But you can be spared if you're with her. His eyes grew wide. The fish was reeling in. His eyes danced. We're being attacked. When? He pushed me aside and ran out of the room. Fish, meat barrel. The axe weighed heavily in my hands as I descended the staircase into the primitive basement for the second time that night. The smell of decaying flesh was clearer this time, but that only furthered my resolve. It was currently closed, and the room was empty aside from me, the ghost, and Sophocles. I walked resolutely to the door and rested my hand on the wheel that had to be spun to open it. It was locked tight. I smiled. But the 200th swing knocked the damn thing clean off and into the dirt. Good, I heaved. Now how much water does he have? I'd like to know if he'll die of asphyxiation or thirst. I coughed, then shook my head. You know what? Never mind. I like a little mystery in my life, and both endings are happy. I got to my feet and faced the door. Make peace with whatever god or devil awaits your heart, I offered to him. Then I turned around and pointed the flashlight at the ghost. She swallowed and took a step back. I bore my eyes into her, looking for any hint that my suspicions were wrong. BD.
Still with us? Good. That last one was just the warm-up. Let's go deeper.
She will come to me, blanketed in the stars. I can't tell you how many times I have heard those words over the last decade. My father, Raymond Chandler, suffered a massive stroke and couldn't say anything else afterward. Just those 9 words over and over. Well, I guess that isn't entirely true. He said something else at the end, but I'll get to that later. During a routine maintenance check on some of the external communication equipment, her tether came loose and she drifted into the darkness of space. I was too young to understand exactly what happened but old enough to understand that she was never coming home. Do you think Mom was scared? I asked one night as my father tucked me in bed. When she floated away. Was she scared? My father smiled that sad smile I came to know all too well. His hand patted me on the head and he placed a stuffed bear next to me on my pillow. No, he said gently. Your mother was a brave woman. Before you were born, we would sit outside each night and look at the stars. Nothing made her happier. Now she is with the stars. I think, she was very happy that she was able to stay there. backslash 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 backslash. Dad suffered an ischemic stroke in 2012. Just 4 days before his 58th birthday. What a gift, right? Speech? That would be gone too, according to the same doctors. Day after day, I would sit at his bedside and read to him. Thriller and detective novels, mostly. He was always so busy with work or taking care of me that he didn't have much time to read. That didn't stop him from picking up a hardback book and adding it to his never-ending retirement reading pile. After finishing up our 5th or 6th detective noir, I closed the book and sat it on the table beside him. Looking at him, I saw his chest rising and falling shallowly. His color was pale and his weight was dropping. With tears in my eyes, I took his frail hand in mine and gave it a squeeze. He was trying to talk, but his mouth was too dry. "She will come to me, blanketed, in the stars," he said weakly. "What?" I said, my heart thundering in my chest. "I couldn't understand you, Dad." As he spoke the words, the bright fluorescent lights above the bed sizzled and burned away. The only lasting effects were reduced hemiparesis, or weakness, on his right side and his inability to communicate anything other than those 9 words. His doctor said it was unusual, but not unheard of. How a stroke damages the brain is different for each person. The ability to form and speak full thoughts may return. It could be weeks or years. The doctor told us. Or it may never improve. "She will come to me, blanketed in the stars." After the wall was sufficiently covered in the small white markings, I waited until he went to bed one evening and decided to clean the walls. I filled a bucket full of warm water and used a soft sponge to remove the markings. It took me hours to wash them away and return the photos and paintings to their original positions. "Dad," I pleaded. "They were just little chalk dots. Let's go in the kitchen and have some breakfast, huh?" It did the trick. "I'm sorry," I said sincerely. "It's your house. If you want to draw on the walls, then that's okay." He looked down at the box in his hand and smiled. "She will come to me, blanketed in the stars," he said questioningly. Backslash 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 backslash. Over the next few years, Dad filled the walls with enormous star maps. His pace had quickened and soon the charts bent around the corner of doors and continued into the adjacent room. Some days he would pull huge books from his office and show me photographs of the constellations and formations as he repeated those echoing words. "She will come to me, blanketed in the stars." 8 years after the stroke and Dad's health was starting to take a turn. He had a more difficult time getting out of bed. Standing for a long period of time was out of the question. His memory seemed to be slipping a bit. Still, he added to his star charts and maps. That was also when the light bulbs started to burn out rapidly. Just one at first. The hallway light. I would put a fresh bulb in, and within 2 or 3 days, the filament inside would be no more than 2 charred prongs. In frustration, I had an electrician come to the house and check the wiring multiple times. They never found any issues. Everything worked just like it should. His work on the stars grew less and less. Sometimes I would wake up to see the glow of the TV hitting the tiny chalk dots on the wall. It almost made the little spots sparkle like the night sky. as though my father's artwork had come to life and embodied the very celestial landscape that danced above us. When I would turn the lamp on beside me, the half-dream figures would vanish. I think my father felt it too. On those nights, I would hear him call out in panic. When I would enter the room, he would be pointing madly from wall to wall and screaming those same 9 words. She will come to me. Blanketed in the stars. On the morning of my father's final day, I think I knew it was near the end. Most of his days he seemed to be filled with fear. He rarely slept unless I sat beside him, hand in hand. If I didn't sleep in the chair next to him, I almost always found him on the floor the next morning. That morning when I entered my father's room, he was sitting in his armchair. His head was tipped back and his robe dropped open sloppily. When I first saw him, I thought he had passed away in the night. My heart ached for a moment until I saw him stir. We ate together in the kitchen. Well, I ate. Dad picked at his breakfast and shoveled a few mouthfuls of eggs. He hadn't been eating much and was beginning to look sickly thin. His doctor offered 4 nutrition regimens and I was sure that would be the next step. Sometime in the afternoon, I must have drifted off. When I woke up, I could see the streetlights flowing in through the windows. Pulling the cord on the lamp beside me, I wasn't surprised to find the bulb was burnt out. Walking groggily to the wall, I flipped the light switch to discover it was also burnt out. I was heading toward the cupboard in the kitchen for some fresh bulbs when I heard my father scream. "Dad!" I shouted. "Dad! Unlock the door. You've got to let me in." I threw my weight against the door, but the thick wood didn't budge. The hinges would rattle slightly, but the door never gave way. Still, the sounds of terror inside persisted. My phone was still beside the recliner in the living room, so I ran back in to grab it and call 911. As I reached to pick it up, I looked at the screen of the baby monitor and my heart nearly stopped. My father sat in his bed, blankets pulled up to his chin, shivering violently. His eyes darted side to side at the walls. Glowing orbs that had once been chalk stars danced along the walls which bulged and rippled. Something behind the walls was pushing against them and trying to break through. Abandoning my phone, I ran to the garage and tumbled down the steps, landing hard on the concrete floor. My head was swimming, but I managed to push myself back onto my feet. Darting toward the tool bench, I found my father's old hatchet and ran back to his bedroom door. My hand found the lock and twisted it, allowing the door to swing in. She will come to me, blanketed in the stars. Dozens of dull lights pushed themselves out of the wall and tumbled onto the floor. They rolled like bowling balls before coming to a stop. The strained sound from the walls fell silent as the orbs of light began to shake. Slowly, they began to move toward each other before forming an enormous sphere. I raised the hatchet above my head, but a cluster of brilliant white balls swung toward me and connected with my head. The hatchet dropped from my hand as I went sailing through the air, crashing against the wall by the ornate door my father had drawn. The air ejected from my lungs, leaving me struggling to draw breath. The thing turned back toward my father and lowered its stance as it began to move forward. My father screamed and thrashed in the bed as the celestial demon crept closer. It seemed to be preparing to lunge for him when suddenly the room was filled with intense light. Even the beast turned to look. I turned to look at the door again. Blanketed in the stars. "She has come for me," he said. "She is blanketed in the stars." "Clara," he cooed. "I knew you would come. You're as beautiful as you were in my dreams." My mother and father walked hand in hand toward the door, stopping for only a moment before me. He smiled at me as a single tear rolled down his cheek. My mother bent over and caressed my face. I put my hand over hers for just a moment as she kissed the top of my head.
That last one tasted like fear and poor decisions. Let's see what the next bite stirs. Hope you're hungry.
I remember that the exploration of Orcus, initiated no more than a decade after the successful landing on the moon, was very low-key for something this big. You would eventually read an article on new evidences that its atmosphere could actually be a gold mine, and how that certain government was making heavy investments towards sending a manned expedition to it, but back then a lot of other discoveries were being made, from infrared satellites being released to exoplanets being found. Up until 2012, everything went smoothly. Then 2013 came, and the faces in the classroom were either confused or amused, but in a way that showed I was the butt of the joke. What's the problem? I asked, truly ignorant. I looked at the current slide half expecting it to show me in my underwear dancing with my dog. But there was nothing wrong with it, it was about Orcus. How many planets are there in the solar system, sir? Another student asked with a tone almost too benevolent, like I was some dying man who forgot his own name. Sir, why not try Googling this planet Orcus? A third student carefully suggested. I complied, still half thinking they had organized an elaborated prank, but slightly nervous. The next day, I was summoned to the dean's office. The university, almost too generously, offered sending me to an isolated research facility where I could develop my studies full-time and still get 70% of my teacher's salary. Besides, I was too embarrassed to return to classroom. My lodging was a pleasant cottage, with a great lab for one behind it. My bedroom had a nice view to distant, deep blue mountains, and the university sent me a housekeeper once a week. She even brought me groceries. From 2013 to 2020, life was a blur of immersing myself in my work, improving my baking abilities and talking to no one. The housekeeper was Russian, and when she showed signs of learning English, she was replaced by a Brazilian one. It was early February when Sarah knocked on my door, a former student of mine who had become a brilliant astronomer. ////. I gladly let her in, the first visit I had in almost a decade, and made us some good tea from the herbs I've been growing myself. Her face switched from determination to a shard of panic, then confidence. I know it had to be it. That's how they didn't catch our memory, then, she observed. It was another cold and rainy night when they came. First, the lights all went out. Then the shadows surrounding us became solid. Sarah let out a pained scream. An unnaturally raspy and robotic voice, so emotionless that it felt evil. Stop pursuing Orcus. The next day, as to leave no doubts that they were serious, they sent me Sarah's index finger inside a Tiffany blue box. So here's my story, for Sarah. By 2012, Sarah herself had discovered a groundbreaking information: the Orklings fed on thoughts and knowledge. They phagocyte all the space probes that NASA sent to Orcus, right after the information was transmitted, indicating that they wanted to be found out. I know that your memory was eaten, but if you really put your mind on it, you'll realize that the world you're seeing now is nothing but a simulacrum of how life on Earth used to be. Because the planet that disappeared without a trace wasn't Orcus. PPT.
Still here? Aw, look at you. Brave little meatbag. Too late to back out now. Next story's already watching.
My name is Cassandra and I can see the future. I'm sure some of you are rolling your eyes right now in disbelief, which is the point of my namesake. No one believes me. And like Cassandra of old, I see tragedies. It took a while before I realized I was different. I couldn't make sense of my visions at first. They were horrifying. Terrible things flashing before my eyes, like the last slides of an old film as the reel runs out. Then, as I began to understand that these images weren't reality, I assumed everyone had these strange visions. It wasn't something you'd ask your parents about, or perhaps I did, and my parents dismissed it as a child's fanciful ideas until I stopped asking. I don't remember. I was young. There was a boy in my class that would try to climb the maple tree in the playground during recess. The teachers made him get down each time. But I was desperate. So I began to tell everyone. The gym teacher. The math teacher. The other students. Finally, I was sent to the principal's office to calm down, and while I was there, the bell rang, and my peers went out to recess. He fell to his knees and clutched his chest. The physicians inside were quick to respond and he was wheeled inside. I didn't stay to see what happened next. I drove away and found someplace quiet to pull over and calm down. I still drive for this rideshare app. This time, I have an ulterior motive. I make sure to look at my clients when they get in the car. And rarely, very rarely, I see something. Sometimes it's as simple as slashing someone's tires so they can't drive to a restaurant as planned. Or a quick trip to the hardware store and then ringing someone's doorbell, posing as a representative of the city's Home Safety Commission, handing out free carbon monoxide detectors. And the person that was going to die in a ski accident, well, it's hard to ski when both your legs have been amputated after being struck by a hit-and-run driver. Sometimes the guilt eats at me. I can hear their screams in my head if I sit still for too long. I don't want to hurt people. I'm so scared every time I do. Scared I'll get caught, scared they'll get away, scared I won't hurt them in just the right way to circumvent the fate waiting for them. My hands still shake each time, but it only takes a moment of resolve, and then it's over. For me, at least. The road to recovery is long for the people I save, but at least they will be alive by the end of it. At least they're alive. I wish they could understand what I'm trying to do for them. But I am Cassandra and I am doomed as much as my namesake was. I don't want your sympathy. I don't care about your anger. I just want someone to understand.
Still with us? Good. That last one was just the warm-up. Let's go deeper.
I recently moved out of my old house, and before I left I found this letter. It was in my garage, in an empty fish tank I was planning on giving away. I don't know who wrote it, and I don't know what to do. The following is a transcription of the letter. I've decided to write this down, just in case you find it. You might, and you might not. I'm satisfied either way. I really wasn't going to contact you at all. I mean, I certainly didn't plan on it, but of course I also didn't plan on you leaving. So now that I know we don't have much time left together, I thought this might be an appropriate goodbye. I didn't even hold it against you when you almost found me and called the police. I was hurt, of course, but I try to let bygones be bygones. And I suppose that was partially my fault anyway. I tried to remember to close the window every time I went in or out of the house, but I'll admit I got sloppy from time to time. I only left it open to let in some fresh air, but I forgot to close it before you got home. It was a careless mistake, and you'll note that I never repeated it. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to talk about it so much. Like I said, I try to forgive and forget, so I'll just say I'm sorry I scared you and leave it at that. Did you know you had mice in your house? I doubt you did. I know how much you hate rodents, and you would have done something had you known they were there. But I got rid of them for you. You never even knew, that's the best part. I love it when I can keep the environment controlled and really see what you're like when you're alone. So why didn't I show myself? Why didn't I take credit for my benevolence? Well, it wasn't because I thought you would be upset that I was living in your house. Though that did cross my mind when you called the police on me for leaving the window open. I'm sorry, I don't mean to keep bringing it up, but that really was uncalled for. No, I didn't show myself because I wanted to observe you. I wanted to watch you in a completely detached setting. If you had known I was there, it wouldn't be the same. You and I have a very close relationship, and I didn't want to ruin it by introducing all the messiness of interaction. You have an aquarium in your living room. You take care of the fish. Well, actually I take care of the fish. You kept forgetting to feed them. But for now let's just pretend you take care of the fish, and what do the fish do in return? They live. Sure, they live very different lives than they would in the wild, but they don't know that. That's what it's like for me and you. I take care of you, and I ask nothing in return. I just watch. I've learned so much about you in the time I've been caring for you. I know your most obvious traits, all the way down to the smallest details. I know how you act, how you move, how you think. I know where you would look for me in your house and where you wouldn't. I was always there to steer you in the right direction, and make you do what was best for you. I helped you decide what to wear, where to go, who your friends were, and all kinds of things. I took good care of you. But all good things must come to an end. I know you're going to be moving out soon. It's a bittersweet end to a beautiful relationship, but I know our time is up. I considered moving out with you, but to be honest, I think I've learned everything I need to about you. I hope you don't take this the wrong way, but I've almost become bored of you. It's alright. There are only so many things you can know about a person. I hope you can learn how to take care of yourself without me. And thank you for all the good times we've had. Your caretaker.
Anyway, let's lighten the mood with something fun and... Nah, just kidding. It gets worse. Hit it.
Can't figure out how to tell my wife and daughter I'm not dying, by Lighting Nations. All I wanted to do was give them a sign, some small, subtle gesture to let them know their messages of love and support had gotten through, but I'd become a prisoner inside my own body. The events leading up to the accident were still a blur. If I squinted my memory, pictures came swirling back. I was late for an important event and speeding along the highway. After that, there were only confused glimpses of a moving ambulance, doctors sticking needles into my skin, and a cold, metal table. Sometimes I couldn't tell whether I was asleep or awake. There was a bright light in front of me, though, and I had this almost unbearable urge to follow it. But then my wife would call my name, and I'd return to the land of the living. Bitter brine forced its way down my throat, invading my lungs. I thrashed around, desperately searching for the surface, already hungry for air. And then, nothing. Just that rhythmic beep 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 of the heart monitor. I sorely wanted to reach out to her, to scream, "Alex, I can hear you. I love you too." The footsteps returned that night. That awful icy hand caressed my cheek, and then, after the slugs enveloped my face, I found myself back in the dark ocean. Unable to tell which direction was up, I picked a direction at random and started kicking, bubbles spewing from my mouth. When it became impossible to hold my breath any longer, I squeezed my eyelids together, sucked water deep into my lungs, and discovered I could breathe. As the figures' lipless mouths moved, their replies came back clear inside my mind, countless voices, all speaking at once. "Beneath? What are you?" I asked, even though the answer seemed obvious. I gulped again. Before she. More nodding. Later that night, the cold hand dragged me back to the murky depths, deeper than ever before. "You don't have much time left," the figure said, anxiously. "She's almost finished harvesting." "I can't. My family." "No," I shouted. "I just have to wake up." I'll find a way. I'll. From behind, a porter pushed a wheelchair through my torso. My spirit scattered like steam before quickly reassembling. I screamed and waved my hands in front of doctors' faces, trying to force somebody, anybody, to notice me. But it was hopeless. An invisible barrier separated me from the world. I'd become a phantom. A shade. That temptation to leave this world behind grew stronger than ever. However, even though others couldn't, I firmly believed my family would be able to see me. Or at least sense my presence. As they approached the bed, oblivious to my yells, the temperature seemed to plummet. Kitted out in her baseball uniform, Maya took a seat by the bed and gave me the play-by-play of her latest game, in which she'd hit another home run with her lucky bat. Baseball. Of course. A clear memory came rushing back. Before the accident, my better half and I got into a giant row about me missing things that were important to Maya. I promised to change my selfish ways, but within a week I'd reverted back to letting work chain me to my desk, and by the time I realized my mistake, Maya's latest game was already half over. Overwhelmed by the gesture of love, I reached out to brush her hair, and as my fingertips passed over her forehead, she shivered. Maya shuddered, her beautiful brown eyes welling up. We were connected. At the doorway, Maya whipped her head around, as if in response to a sudden noise. Her mother smiled thinly. Come on. Let Dad get some rest. Wait. I screamed, quickly floating after them. As I drifted further and further from my body, a thick mist enveloped the ward. The gloom swallowed my family and everyone else. Now there was nothing now except for my physical body, the bed, part of the room, and that terrible bright light, still beckoning me to leave this world behind, to move on to the next. Okay buddy, you've said your goodbyes, now it's time to go. You really don't want to go back to the ocean. Trust me. Wait, had the light actually spoken, or was it my imagination? It didn't matter either way, because the thought of abandoning Maya made me sick. If I moved on, she'd spend the rest of her life racked with guilt. I had to confront this strange entity and put a stop to its harvest. She made her way towards my body, leaving behind wet footprints with every step. But halfway there, the withered figure stopped to look from me to my body, back and forth. In the corner, the heart monitor accelerated. I gulped. Whatever you've been doing. This, harvest. It ends now. My thin voice echoed on and on. She threw her head back and let out a series of phlegmy coughs and grunts, a horrible sound masquerading as laughter. I moved to prevent her from stepping closer to the bed, but she leaned straight through ghost me and clutched my physical face, dragging me into the deep, dark depths once again, likely for the final time. As the leeches began swelling up, becoming fatter and even more grotesque, the bright light flickered and dimmed, before disappearing entirely. You should have listened, the pale figure said. Now it's too late. Summoning all my energy, I flew at the twisted lady and passed straight through her, straight through the bed, and landed halfway across the room, now almost completely disintegrated. Just then, there was a hollow thud as Maya's lucky bat rolled across the floor, stopping directly in front of me. Had I knocked it over? After a quick, silent prayer, I reached forward. I let one hand slide halfway down the bat and stabbed it forward like a pool cue. It exploded out the back of the twisted lady's neck, sending leeches sailing through the air. That's when I woke up. My aching muscles felt like rusted machine parts grinding back to life, little by little. I flexed my fingers several times and then awkwardly plunged both hands inside the lady's skull. An avalanche of leeches spilled on my face, momentarily blinding me. I furiously plucked them off my eyes and lips, squashing 2 or 3 or 4 at a time. My attacker collapsed backward and dragged me out of bed onto the tiled floor, still attached to the medical equipment by clips and wires. Around us, leeches flopped around. I spun onto my chest and hammer-fisted them into a lumpy, foul-smelling paste. Exhausted and groggy, I collapsed flat against the floor, darkness already seeping into the corners of my vision. The last thing I remember is a nurse sprinting into the room. When I woke up, Maya was nearby, her brown eyes all red and puffy. "Daddy?" A feeble "mrah" was the best I could manage. Immediately she threw her arms around me. On the other side of the bed, my wife threw a hand against her mouth, covering that unforgettable smile, before finally joining the hug. The doctor called my recovery a miracle. My vital signs looked worse every day, they even had the pull-the-plug conversation. Fortunately, Alex found herself agonizing over the decision. When the kid absolutely blasted that ball over the fence, I jumped up and instantly regretted the action. It felt like somebody jabbed a red-hot poker between my ribs. For the remainder of the game, I stayed glued to my seat, quietly chanting, "Woo, go Maya." Afterward, on our way back to the car, my daughter looked at her bat with a sense of awe. Of sheer wonder. 3 home runs in 3 games. This really is my lucky bat.
Need a break? Too bad. These stories don't wait, and neither do we. Next one's worse. In the best way.
I'm a forensic psychiatrist working with the criminally insane. I think my latest patient might be telling the truth, by Richard Saxon. Part 1. Part 2. Part 3. I'm well aware of the rules, Adam. We've gone through this dance quite a few times now, I shot back with a smirk. You know the boss. Due diligence and all. If you get murdered, at the least the judge can't say we didn't warn you. He tried to joke, but I could tell something was keeping him on edge. It was a strange sight to see Adam so nervous. He'd been working at the forensic psychiatry department for the better part of 3 decades, dealing with all sorts of dangerous individuals. On any other day, his hardened exterior and undying confidence would make anyone feel safe in his presence. But something about the current patient unnerved the man, a fact that intrigued me more than anything written in the file I'd been given. Speaking of your boss, why isn't Martin here to brief me himself? I don't even know the patient's name. The file just reads 39, I asked. Well. He doesn't exactly know that you're here, Adam explained, his weak smile fading. Excuse me? I asked, knowing how the breach of protocol would piss Martin off beyond belief. While Adam had some seniority working as a guard for the better part of 30 years, he still answered to someone, and Martin was the only one in the clinic with more years under his belt. There's something different about this one. I needed someone with your experience to have a look at him, to see if I'm right about him or just going crazy. The facility resembled a prison more than a psychiatric department, with cells lining the hall, each of the empty. People had clearly lived in them fairly recently, seemingly evacuated for reasons I could only guess at. It was an odd sight considering most patients were too dangerous to let out, which meant they spent the majority of their days inside. Where is everyone? I finally asked. Safe from what? If patient 39 is so dangerous, why keep him here? I asked. So it's a drug-induced psychotic episode, I stated as I kept pushing for answers. That was our theory too, but... He was arrested alongside 3 other culprits. They were left in a room together as they were processed. In the span of 5 minutes, all except him had died. He killed them? I asked. Their throats were slit, clean and deep, he trailed off. But there wasn't a knife in the room, nor anything that could be branded as a weapon. By all means, it looks like he did it with his bare hands, which is impossible considering he didn't have a drop of blood on him. Still, he claims he's responsible for their deaths. By then we'd reached the end of the department. A place that had once housed 20 inmates, was now down to a single prisoner, a man that would soon be my next patient. That's not what I'm saying. We stood before a solid, metal door that led into an interrogation area. Within the room the inmate would be safely locked away behind bars, giving me ample space to interview him and determine whether or not his behavior was due to a mental illness or not. "Alright, Leon. You ready?" he asked as he fumbled with his keys. "You staying here?" I asked back. "I ain't setting foot inside unless I have to. The others already prepped him, you have your emergency alarm device should something happen. I'll be right here ready to help." A weird sense of unease washed over me as I was faced with patient 39. He was basically just a kid, early 20s, skinny. He didn't strike me as a drug user. In fact, apart from the heavy bags under his eyes and pale skin, he seemed perfectly normal. Not someone one would expect to be responsible for almost a dozen deaths. However, appearances could be deceiving. "A psychiatrist," I explained. "Why don't you tell me your side of the story?" I asked. "No, please don't," he begged. "I wasn't talking to you," he said. "Who made you do what?" I asked. "They forced me to summon him, he needed a vessel," he said in a weak whisper. "Now he won't leave. The cards, they made me pick." "He would punish you?" I asked. "But being mad at me would still beat him being mad at you. I just want to understand what you're going through," I argued. "Your death wouldn't help anyone," I said. "You need help, but if I'm going to help you, I need to know exactly what's going on." He refused to respond. He just sat there catching his breath, as if an immense load had just been taken off his shoulders. He lay himself down on the ground, too tired to keep the conversation going. But the session had ended. The man was about to pass out from the ordeal. Despite my gut telling me something was wrong with the man besides his mental health, I jotted down some notes, including a psychiatric diagnosis. Despite the pain that he had caused, he had my sympathy. It couldn't be easy to live in a world that no one else believed in. I was jolted back to attention by someone hammering on the door from the outside, begging to be let in. 9 rapid, consecutive knocks before the room once again fell to an uncomfortable silence. "Adam?" I called. My hand trembled as I reached out to open the door. With great trepidation I stepped outside to find Adam standing with his back turned to the door. But he remained silent, staring off into the distance. I slowly approached him and put a hand on his shoulder. Even then he didn't seem to notice my presence. Once I removed my hand I realized it felt wet. I looked down at it to see my palm covered in blood. "What the?" I mumbled as I walked around to face Adam. There he stood, his throat slit and blood running down his chest. Based solely on the puddle growing on the floor, I knew he'd lost an amount significant enough to kill him. Despite that fact, his face showed no sign of distress, or any kind of emotion for that matter. He just stared ahead, his body not accepting that it was supposed to be dead. "He's gone," one of the guards said as I held on to Adam. The bleeding had long since stopped, with his heart unable to effectively push it out. "Dr. Dietrich?" one of them asked, trying to break me free from my trance. I only responded when one of them touched me on the shoulder. The entire crew, doctors, nurses and guards had rushed in, and I'd barely even noticed. "Come on, let's get you out of here," a somber voice said. He didn't dare look me in the eyes. "It's not what you think," he began. "They never should have called you in. Because any one of us might be next. I think it's time you and I had a talk."
You're still tuned to Horace Lopp. Frequency unknown. Stories endless. Let's spin the next nightmare.
Time is precious. It drips away slowly, painfully, like blood from a wound. Once we lose it, we never get it back. Perhaps no one understands this as much as my family. He was 13 and I was 9. We were playing one of my favorite games, hide and seek. I remember listening intently as Horace counted down from 30, 23, 22, 21. The attic was completely dark, and there was so much dust that I sneezed loudly. I hoped that Horace hadn't heard me. I dashed across the room, past boxes and old books, and looked around desperately for a place to hide. That was when I saw the purple curtain. It seemed to be billowing, though there was no air and certainly no windows up there. I paid no mind to it, I just wanted a good place to hide. I ran up to the curtain and yanked it aside. "You little asshole, you left the stick in the hall. What are you doing up here? Mom and Dad will, what are those things?" When Horace and I questioned our parents about the hourglasses, I was sent to my room while they had a discussion with Horace. When I saw him next, Horace seemed to have lost all of the light in his eyes. I prodded him for information, but all he did was tell me that if I went into the attic again, I would be given up for adoption. That was enough to keep me sincere. I eventually forgot about our little adventure up into the attic, until, when I was 15, and my grandmother passed away. My father took me aside to give me the typical life and death talk. Only this one wasn't so typical. "Listen, son, I know this is gonna be hard to take in, especially with all of us grieving, but you must know. Now is as good a time as any. I'm not trying to be funny, and I'm not pulling your leg. Everything I say from here on is true, and extremely vital. A couple of centuries ago, we had an ancestor make a deal with something. It gave him everything he wanted, but it wasn't without a price. He was cursed to know the day of his death, as were the other members of his family, 9 in total." I listened with dread, unable to completely process what I was hearing. This sounded like an old folk tale, but the look on my father's face told me otherwise. "What happens if there are more than 9? I asked, and, somehow, my father seemed to grow even more dour. He was so precious, so beautiful, that I couldn't bear to see him have to go through the same hell that my brother and I had to. I didn't want him going mad from the pressure of looking at his own hourglass, or being indebted to some creature that haunted our family centuries ago. So on the night that he was born, I crept up into the attic of my parents' house. I peered upon the venerated ones, noting the single one that had obviously just began sifting its sand, with so much more left over. I was determined to break this cycle, once and for all, and so I flipped the hourglass back over. I watched as what little sand had already passed drifted slowly back in with the rest. And then I waited. Hopefully this hadn't backfired. When I returned home, my son was still alive and well. I rejoiced, for the first few years anyway. Tim turned out to be quite the troublemaker, fighting other kids at school, being disrespectful to myself and his mother, and even threatening to kill everyone someday. One day, when Tim was around 9 years old, tragedy struck. My wife's car was hit by an 18-wheeler and flipped over the side of the freeway. She was unrecognizable. I had to identify her by her tattoo on her thigh. The other passenger in the car, our son Tim, however, had miraculously survived the accident. As Tim continued his disturbing behavior, I found myself hating him. Why was I cursed to care for this demon, while my wife's life had been violently taken away? What kind of world did we live in? I fell into a depression and talked with my brother about my troubles. When I told him about what I had done with Tim's hourglass the day he was born, Horace stood up. It all makes sense now, you disrupted the cycle. I wish I could say I argued. I wish I could say I tried to convince my brother not to murder my 10-year-old son. But I didn't. I wanted him out of my life. He was nothing like me, and he damn sure wasn't anything like his mother. I waited outside the bedroom as Horace entered with a pillow. He wanted to end Tim as painlessly as possible. I remember hearing my son as he struggled under his uncle's grasp. Tears flowed down my cheeks as I listened and waited for it to stop. And waited. And waited. Nearly 4 whole minutes had gone by and Tim still had not stopped fighting, though the pillow was placed firmly over his face. When Horace finally stepped back, looking shocked, Tim sat straight up, hellfire in his eyes. And number X200B.
That last one tasted like fear and poor decisions. Let's see what the next bite serves. Hope you're hungry.
Part 1. Part 2. Part 3. Part 5. Sorry about the incident earlier with Part 5 disappearing. It was my own fault, and the //no-sleep mods were very helpful in restoring it. I laid in an empty cell, trying to catch a small nap since I'd been up all night. My mind was racing though, and made it hard to sleep. I kept rehearsing what I was going to say when Hernandez finally came to get me. 1. That I'd been in David's home recently. After all, the data on those flash drives had been updated just the day before. Even the ones that didn't have the kidnapping transcription on them. 2. The flash drive containing messages between David and his partner might lead them to believe I had kidnapped Katie. I kept trying to play out the conversation with Hernandez. I hoped it would pan out the same way it was running in my head. I was woken up by a slight knock on the bars. My eyes peeked open to see a man in a suit standing there accompanied by an officer. So I hear, he said. I'm going to have to apologize in advance. It's likely that you'll have to repeat your story many times during these proceedings. To prevent this as much as possible, you and I are going to sit down and write your version of events down. That way, you can fall back on your statements and ensure that what you say is consistent and accurate. Does that sound good to you? He said. It made sense, so I nodded. Xander is fine, I replied. Okay, Xander. Let's start writing. I have to go to another appointment, but I've asked that you be allowed to continue working in your cell. I've scheduled a meeting with the prosecutor and Detective Hernandez tomorrow at noon. Do you think you can have it complete by then? Yes, I think so, I said. And I did. I spent the rest of my day writing that statement. I slept sporadically, but I was desperate to complete it before noon the next day. So much had happened, and I had so much to say. In fact, I was more proud of that statement than this one. That statement had a lot more fresh memories. This one feels a little scatterbrained. My statement was concise and to the point. But maybe it's for the best that this is the one that I posted. The tape recorder between us was running. I've been brought up to date on the cases you're involved in, Chief Gunderson said in a gruff voice. I'm interested to hear everything from your perspective considering the recent developments. No, I arrested you because you are suspected of burning down in King's house and thereby killing her, Chief Gunderson said. Hernandez tells me that you might have felt justified in doing so considering all the accusations that you've levied against Mr. King. So, I'd like to hear what has happened from the beginning and hear your side of events. Who's he? I asked, pointing to the lanky man. Oh, so you'll be the one trying to put me in prison, I quipped. Terry put a warning hand on my leg. I'll be trying to establish the truth about what happened, he corrected, glaring down at me. My client has prepared a statement that he intends to wholly rely on, Terry said, pushing copies of the 17 handwritten pages across the table. The chief and prosecutor took one. Hernandez stepped forward and grabbed one too. He instantly started reading from his spot in the corner. I tried to catch his eye, but he didn't look at me. I tuned Terry out and focused on Hernandez. There was something about his demeanor that caught my attention. I couldn't tell what it was. I focused on him for the entire meeting, trying to figure out what my instinct was telling me. They talked over legal details with Terry and corroborated the process of discovery between the two parties. After I'd been arrested, the police had searched my car and found the hard drive, flash drives, and psychiatric evaluation. And something else that was curious. A half-empty gas canister. That fucker had planted a gas can in my car at some point without me knowing. I'd been in my car all night, so either David knew he was going to burn his house down before I went to Walmart, or he planted it in the few minutes I was in the police station. I told Terry about the gas can being planted, and he wrote down some notes. The police had searched through the contents of all the flash drives and discovered the conversation between David and his partner. Except, as predicted, they accused me of writing the messages and therefore linked me to a kidnapping. The text file never specified Katie's name, but they claimed Katie's kidnapping was the most likely scenario since I knew about it and was therefore involved. Despite this evidence, however, the prosecution didn't feel like they could convince a jury without more evidence. So, Katie's kidnapping wasn't planned to be laid against me as a formal charge, but they were searching for evidence. They had also tried to open the contents of David's hard drive, but found that it was encrypted, just like I had. They'd sent it off to a lab to be analyzed for whatever data could be salvaged. As a result, the prosecutor could only charge me with possession of someone else's medical records without permission. That was a serious crime, apparently. Which meant they were accusing me of signing up, spending all the money, and then reporting fraud. Also a major crime. The tape showed a man in a dark hoodie walk into the store. The video was grainy as you would expect, but despite that, a large symbol on the back of the hoodie could be recognized. The man in the hoodie walked to the ATM and pulled something from their pocket. The prosecution claimed it was a cell phone since the timestamp on the camera matched the timestamp of the log into my bank account. The firefighters had filed a report stating that the fire had been started from the middle of the living room where a puddle of gasoline had ignited. The flames had spread throughout the house. Traces of gasoline were found in various rooms, making them believe that the suspect, me, went from room to room and splashed gasoline around. Just like in the movies. I now know that David had set an alert on his phone that was linked to the app he had installed on my phone. When my GPS read that I was at his house, an alert would be sent to his phone as a text message. I can only guess that he jumped in his car, left work, and sped all the way home. That's why I think the time was so close. I'm telling you all of this detail so you can see just how hopeless I felt while I sat in jail. I was there for 2 whole weeks where it was the same accusations and evidence over and over. I really started to just give up. During the first few days, I asked Terry about how we could prove that it was David specifically who had committed these crimes. He frowned and told me I should be more concerned about being proven innocent period, not on pinning it to another man. By the end of 2 weeks, I was ready to just plead guilty rather than fight. I also missed Clark's first hearing in the graffiti case, so I had no idea how that was going, which made me feel guilty that I couldn't support him. Why? He shrugged. Just how it works, he said. Did they find anything on Isaac? I asked. I'd been clinging to the hope that Isaac's body would turn up evidence against David. I just wanted to nail him for that one crime. Just one. I wanted it so bad that my hands would shake when I thought about it. Hernandez, I said as he turned to leave. I thought you believed me. I do, he said. Until you burned David's house down. Now I'm not so sure who the psychopath really is. I didn't do it. I shouted, but he walked away. The two officers who drove were polite to me, but instantly cranked up the radio when we got on the road. I could barely hear myself think, and was starting to get frustrated. I had always hated car trips without my own music. Now I was stuck in a 2-hour ride with my hands cuffed behind my back and a radio blasting music I didn't like. We were about an hour in, and I was ready to scream. I stared out the window, trying to find something interesting to watch and focus my mind on. We were on a 2-lane highway with no other cars in sight. It was getting late, so looking back, I figure people were home for the night and that's why it was so dead. The truck slowly neared the side of the police cruiser before pressing against it. The cops shouted. The cop who was driving slammed on his brakes, and the other cop dropped the radio he was reaching for. The cruiser didn't slow down fast enough, however, and the truck nudged it off the road. Don't get up, he threatened, walking towards me. I didn't bother trying. He walked over to where I sat and went behind me. I tried to face him, but he kicked me lightly. He knelt down and I felt him scratching the metal on my handcuffs. I was confused, but sat absolutely still. Nice to see you again, Xander, he said, walking to stand in front of me. I watched him with true fear. His entire demeanor was different from the night we graffitied his house. He was changing. When I didn't answer, he laughed. He was twisting the small object in his gloved hands. I noticed, through the blood, that it was a crudely crafted shiv about the length and width of a finger. Remember the night you graffitied my house? I nodded. I told you I'd consider giving you advice in how to succeed in our game. Well, the time has come. I'm giving you more than advice. See, you're no fun in jail. I've seen the evidence they have on you. You're going away for a long time. I don't want that. So, I'm granting you a second chance to keep playing. He walked behind me again, and I felt sticky blood on my fingers and hand as he pressed the small shiv against my hand. Now, here's how this works, he said, standing back in front of me. I'm going to leave this knife with your fingerprints on it in the car. They'll think you stabbed the cops and made a run for it. I'm going to remove your handcuffs and let you make a run for it. You'll have a 30-minute head start before I call in on the radio. Get up, he commanded. I struggled to my feet, rolling in the dirt to get to my knees and stand. There we go, he purred. He motioned for me to turn around, and I did. He pulled the handcuff keys off the dead cop and unlocked the cuffs. I rubbed my wrists. They were sore and marked from the car crash. David had set a backpack next to the car, and now set it in my hands. Shuddering, in shock, and absolutely terrified, I walked on into the woods. An NBSP.
Whew, telling gave me chills. But hey, we're just getting started. The next one's sharper. You'll see.
I work as a security guard for a company that takes jobs no one else will, by Rick Nickendackin 123. They explain that the job is risky, but also paid well. I had been jobless for a while and jumped at the opportunity regardless of the risks. Unlike most other companies though, they made me read through the entire NDA aloud and made sure I was aware of all the rules. Some of the things I read there made me think initially that this was all a joke. But then I saw that my superior was dead serious. My job would basically be to provide support to the guards at other posts via comms and patrol the perimeter I was stationed at. Now our HQ was located in an office building compound which had multiple companies renting the adjacent buildings. I would mostly work nights with the occasional mornings. The rules were as follows. I was to do a full sweep of the compound and all offices, save for Building 4, the call center office. I was not to approach Building 4 under any circumstances, no matter what I heard from the outside. Even if I saw someone inside from the windows, I was not to engage. When I asked for more details, they refused to answer me, stating that I should simply obey their orders if I value my life. For Building 6, the designer company, the rules were even stranger. Here's what the chief told me. I've since encountered the woman once and it was a grueling and agonizing experience I would rather not talk about. Another rule I had to remember was not opening the gate between the hours of 22-07. The chief said that under no circumstances am I to open the gate, even if the next guard comes 5 minutes earlier to relieve me of duty, the gate was to remain closed. As I approached and put my keys into the keyhole, my phone started ringing. I answered it without even looking at the caller, but when I heard the voice, my blood froze. It was my coworker. "Hey, I'm gonna be late 30 minutes today, sorry man." I hung up and just then realized it was 6:50 a.m. I stared at the silhouette on the other side of the gate, who suddenly started banging on the door, demanding to be let in, stating he had lost his cell phone and he was the real coworker. I retreated to the guardhouse and waited for what seemed like forever until the banging stopped. In reality, it only lasted until 7 a.m. Those were all the rules I had to follow on my own post, and most of the time it's uneventful. However, I've heard stories from other coworkers. It was then that he saw the old man's dead body in his chair near his sobbing wife. He quit the same night. Another creepy thing that happened was on a farmstead which our company has guards posted on. A guy by the name of Jeff who worked there told me about his own experience which made him run away from his post in the middle of the night. Now I haven't seen this so I can't guarantee anything, but Jeff swears it's true. He says all of a sudden, out of the crops a man just stands up. The top of the crops reached to his waist, which was technically impossible, because the crops themselves were taller than Jeff, and he's a pretty tall guy. But the man grins at Jeff and continues calling his name playfully, as if he's still hiding from him. Needless to say, Jeff didn't stick around to see what the fuck that guy wanted. When he reported it to HQ, they said there were sightings of that man in the past, always calling the names of the guards, but never really doing anything harmful.
Something's still listening, and it wants more. Next story. Just don't say its name.
A couple of years ago I was what you would call a bit of an edgelord. I was obsessed with disgusting and scary images, offensive humor, and no right was more important to anyone than my free speech, which mostly meant throwing slurs at people over voice chat. I'm not sure if I can say I'm a better person now, or more mature, but thinking or acting the way I used to usually results in me running to throw up. I can barely witness anything gory or offensive without it instantly relating it to myself and getting flooded with unwanted images that escalate worse and worse. I've turned into the guy who PMs you and thanks you for trigger warnings, saving me from getting violently ill at work. Well, it sounded like something hilarious to do, but the more we looked into it we realized it is not like a video that is out there, it is a specific stream you need to know about, as it is almost always streamed through different platforms with brand new accounts. So after hours of digging we found out that one was happening in a few days around midnight. That was perfect. Normally we got out around 11 and hit up a diner to get drinks and breakfast food, so we were gonna do that instead. One guy was joking about watching people dying videos to condition himself to win, another said it would be all cringe stuff or extreme fetish stuff. In hindsight we were so naive, acting tough and even salivating at the prospect of showing how crazy we were. There was an old-timey countdown reel and then the transmission started. It was just a teenaged Asian girl in a hospital gown, sitting on a metal chair in some sort of clinical room that was white and spotless. Literally as soon as it started she said, 1, in perfect, unaccented English, making me think this was filmed somewhere here in the USA. 2. She said, and something squirmed in my stomach. 3, and the gamer girl's arm twitched hard, startling all of us. It was like a spasm moved through us like a wave. Despite the booze or pills or weed, I did not feel numb at all. I felt tense, exposed and raw. Transfixed. A few weeks later we all got laid off when the second shift was eliminated and it became a regular 8 to 5 call center. I was not offered to move to another shift. I mean, most evenings I would just stare at the ringing phone and ignore it, so I see why they wanted to get rid of me. It was better that way. If I had been fired I would not been able to collect unemployment and seek help. I saw a therapist to help me cope, and a dermatologist to treat the stretch marks and scars on my limbs. I know one of the guys never got help. Instead he got a shotgun and ended up in the newspaper after a gruesome murder-suicide involving a bunch of strangers. The other guy is actually okay, probably because he left the room first. I see him about town, but we never say hi. We lost track of the gamer girl. She got evicted and has not updated her Facebook since that night. And the person we left behind in that room, who watched the whole transmission, I do not think of him anymore. Like sometimes I start to picture him in my head, twisting and shaking and snarling, and I stop myself. If I think of him I'll just make myself sick, so I try not to. Nope.
Sleeping yet? Didn't think so. Next story's up. And yeah, it's worse. You're welcome.
An NBSP. My son Jake first showed his awareness of the natural world when he was only 2. He pointed at something I couldn't see in a tree and said, "Cheep cheep," before 3 birds took flight. Our adopted dog Toby had runaway fever, but Jake was always able to find him in an afternoon of driving around. The fatherly sense within told me that Jake was tapping into something greater than intuition, and I wanted to test it. An NBSP. We were all driving back from the grocery store when Jake made us stop the car. He knew there's someone not far from the highway who needed our help. We stopped and followed Jake to what looked like an old dry well, where we found a girl had fallen through the rotted boards sealing the opening. Jake got his photo taken with the first responders. It made the cover of 2 local newspapers under the headline "Boy Finds, Saves Local Girl from Derelict Water Tank." An NBSP. We appreciated the fact the house came with nice dressers, bureaus and beds with factory plastic still on them, a fantastic sight for burnt-out travelers with a leaking air mattress. We had just enough energy to unpack the sheets to make the bed, crashing immediately. An NBSP. I would have been dead if it weren't for Jake ripping me off of the bed. I fell limp in my son's arms. I didn't lack the energy, I wasn't winded, I simply didn't have the bodily strength to stand. Worse yet, when I fell, my bare feet and hands that touched the hardwood floor, and I could feel that magnetic suction again. An NBSP. My bed was alive too, Dad, Jake said as he helped me stand on wobbly legs. I never got in it. I went to your guy's room to wake you up, but you were already in. I collapsed again. I told Jake to dial 911. An NBSP. I was surprised to see the police chief that owned the home before us show up with the fire department. They went up to the bedroom and found my wife's underwear in our bed but no woman. The chief had a steadfast belief that my wife was simply confused and lost, and that she'll turn up any time now, and laughed when I told what happened, with being stuck to the bed. He even laughed when I told him that I was 230 pounds and 6 feet 5 inches a few hours ago. Now, I was about the same height and weighed less as my son. He asked, "What, do you want me to believe this house was somehow eating you? That it ate your wife? Are you insane?" That's exactly what I wanted him to believe, and if I were not as big as I were, it would have totally absorbed me like it did to my wife, until they found her.
And now, as the hour gets cold, and the shadows stretch long into the corners of your room, it's time.
Yeah. Chew the spooky violin. But seriously, this next one? Even I didn't sleep after hearing it.
I've seen something coming from you.
What? Just because I sleep in a coffin and collect cursed dolls?
Among other things. This is the final descent for the night. One last story, dragged up from the depths of the disturbed and deranged.
Go ahead. Turn off the lights. We dare you.
This is Horror Slop.
Someone snaps their fingers outside my window every night at 3 a.m. The neighbors warned me not to look at him, by Robau Booty. I heard it my first night in the new house. Someone walking down the street and snapping their fingers with both hands in the middle of the night. Shit. I had forgotten to close my curtains. Earlier that day, an older couple came over with a saran-wrapped plate of muffins and a warning. They told me that every night at 3 a.m., someone walks outside the house and snaps his fingers. They said that I should never, under any circumstances, look at the man. If I did, I would sorely regret it. When I asked them what happened if you looked at him, they didn't say a word. Instead, they just looked at each other, and the husband shook his head. Footsteps went away from the window and back up the road in the direction they came. It wasn't until the footsteps trailed off that I noticed the sound of someone crying. After a moment, I realized it was me. I was crying, no, sobbing uncontrollably. The experience had been absolutely terrible and frightening in a way I cannot put into words. The worst part was that the louder the snaps got, the more I wanted to look at who was doing them. It wasn't just a morbid curiosity, it was almost as if the sound was beckoning me, like an audible angler fish was inviting me into its razor-filled jaws. Once I fine-tuned my nighttime defense strategies, my life started getting back to normal. I joined a book club, settled into my new job, and even became friends with a couple coworkers. One was a goofy guy named Tyler who's stupid in a fun-to-be-around kind of way, and the other was a beautiful girl I was flirting with named Amanda. Everything was going great until I had the dumb idea to invite both of them over for a little party at my place. We started off with board games, pizza, and beer, then more beer, then some pizza, and finally some more beer. At one point Tyler got up to use the pisser, as he put it, and I seized the opportunity to capitalize on the liquid courage I had in my system and make a move on Amanda. I was just building up to it when Tyler shouted out, "What the fuck is this stuff in your room?" I froze. I had gone so long without waking up at 3 a.m. that I had half forgotten about the thing that roamed the neighborhood. I looked down at my watch. "Don't touch it. Get away from the window." I shouted at Tyler, who was peeling back the box on the windowsill. He and Amanda stared at me with their mouths gaping open, and I knew I had to explain myself. I told them all about the thing that comes by every night at 3 a.m. and how it was incredibly dangerous to look at him. I expected them to think I was crazy, but that wasn't exactly how they reacted. "Whoa," Tyler gasped. "So, like, your neighborhood is haunted? So, like, you've never even seen the guy that does this?" he asked me. I shook my head. "How do you know it isn't just some random loser playing a prank?" "Trust me, if you heard it you would know that it isn't anything human," I told him. He looked at me with a flash of excitement. "What time is it?" he asked. I checked my watch again. 2:58, I stuttered, and then looked at him in terror. I did not want them to witness the snapping. For some reason it just felt dangerous to have them around. I worried something unexpected would happen, something out of my control, like Amanda tripping and accidentally ripping down the box on the window. Or Tyler being Tyler and trying to drunk fight the monster. I mean, they were two highly intoxicated young adults, and we were at what shared a passing resemblance to a party. I was basically playing with fire inside a fuel tank. "We need to get out of here," Let's go back into the living room, come on. I blurted and tried to herd the two out of my room, but Tyler wouldn't budge. No fucking way, man. Now that we're here, I want to hear this thing. I'm staying. I could tell he meant it, and I didn't know what I could do to convince him to leave. Before I could even think of something else to say, I heard it. The snaps were starting from down the street. I don't hear Dash, Amanda started to say, but she was cut off by the sudden sound of snapping that came from right outside the window. I groaned. He was here. Tyler, who was facing the window, fell backwards onto the floor. Holy shit, he giggled. It's real. I didn't like the look I saw on Tyler's face. He was eyeing the window up and down like it was a roller coaster he was about to ride, a plunge into adventure that he was ready to take. Tyler, get over here. Amanda yelled. The snapping started to get louder, and Tyler's visage changed from excited to afraid. However, that glimmer of adventure still shone in his eye. Amanda covered her ears and crouched down to her knees. I could tell by her face that she was crying. For a second I bent down to comfort her, and when I looked up I just barely caught Tyler's mouth moving. I'm not the best lip reader, but I could tell he said something like, I think I'm going to open the window, as he reached to pull the box off the windowsill. I sprang up from the floor across the room towards him and shouted with all my might for him to stop, but it was too late. The thing outside the window let out a deep, animal moan of pleasure, and then all we could hear was a mortifying, blood-curdling wail. It came from Tyler, and it sounded like a mix between a terrible human shriek and the squeal of a pig being slaughtered. I felt bad for him, but at the same time I didn't know what I could do to help without putting myself in danger. Thankfully, the screaming soon subsided, and after a few seconds of silence I decided to open my eyes. Tyler was sitting in the corner, slumped over like a drunk. His mouth was turned up in a slight smile and drool poured out of the corner. I'm fine, he said dryly as he stood up. I looked at the watcher, and he has helped me truly see. He took a step toward us. I think you two should look, I promise you won't regret it. He took another step forward and reached a hand out in our direction. Just take a quick peek. I won't tell anyone. Tyler, what is that thing doing? I asked him tentatively as I took a cautious step backward. Thud. Who? Tyler asked me. That thing outside. Get out, now. She took off running and I followed close after. Behind us, I heard Tyler call out, this time in his normal voice as if the real Tyler had fought his way out of the prison that was his mind. By the time I got through the front door, Amanda was already out of sight. Her car wasn't in the driveway, so I assumed she made it to safety. My car was in the garage and the keys were up in my room, so I ran away on foot. New screams and the sounds of tearing flesh echoed out into the night as I crossed the lawn and scampered down the sidewalk. I burst inside and collapsed onto the sticky tile floor where a worker had just mopped. He looked slightly annoyed, but not in the least bit shocked. I guess the graveyard staff at a fast food place see a lot of crazy shit.
And there you have it, dear listeners. One final scream, echoing into the void.
Yeah. Void screams, eternal darkness, I did it. Can I eat now?
We're still on air, Roxy.
Oh no, just the spooky FCC is gonna haunt us for breaking the mood.
If you enjoyed tonight's descent into depravity, don't forget to like, subscribe, and what does he always say?
Stab that bell icon like it's your ex possessed by a demon, and leave a comment telling us what story made you question. I have choices.
And if you survive the night, we'll be waiting.
Same dat time, same that crypt.
You're the reason we have complaints, you know that.
You're welcome.